So I'll call the meeting to order, declare we have a quorum present. Since we're still on virtual meetings, I'll introduce the members of the board here, myself, Alice Livedall, other members, John Demalia, Francois Steiger, Christopher Monroe, Erica Deck, and we're missing one member right now. He may show up later, Bill Holmans. So again, having called it to order, I will hear public comments, but in this case, since we do have a public hearing coming up, if you're here to address matters in the public hearing, which involves 69 Gardner Road, hold those comments. I'll give you a chance to speak later. And we do have also, if you're here on the A&R plan, we're going to call that next. So is there anybody else out there? Do you know, Mallory, that wants to speak about anything else?
Nobody has their hands up.
Okay, all right, then we'll proceed. Do we have minutes?
No, we haven't got anything new.
All right, I could say good because I haven't read them. All right, action items. The first item on our agenda, which is a little bit confusing to me actually, is an A&R hearing for 150 Old Minster Road. And it was submitted by Edmund Roberts, and it involves he and his abutters property. Specifically, it shows that a triangle about a little over half an acre of land, or about a half an acre of land, is being transferred from one lot to the other, and it's at the back. It does not involve frontage, which I originally saw. So do we have either the Roberts here, Mr. Robert, the petitioner?
We have Zach here, someone from Zach. I don't know if
Oh, from Zach is here. Okay. So I'd like him to speak about sort of why this is, and to address a couple of issues I have. So why don't you patch him in and let him talk to us for a minute?
Sure. I don't know. I have a Sonia Zach who's here, but I also spoke with Alex. I don't know who's here, but whoever is here, they can unmute and take the floor.
Hi. Can you introduce yourself?
Okay, Alex Zock is here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right.
The White
Linda
Trust.
White, excuse me?
Yeah, if you can address the White Trust.
Yes.
Yeah.
Linda is going to be selling her house, and before that, she wanted to sell a piece of backland to the Roberts next door, kind of have a little bit of a buffer between the Roberts property and the existing White property. That's pretty much it.
Okay. So it doesn't, so I was doing, I go my checklist for A&R plans.
Sure.
And I didn't see on the plan the total acreage of Robert's land. Is it anywhere on the plan? And also I didn't see, that requisite statement, the required minimum upland if you don't show wetlands.
Yeah, it's over in the near the bottom left, the written notes. Number 2 says lists the remaining frontage and area, and statement saying that there's more than 40,000 square feet of free of wetlands, just above the locus map.
Okay, I'm working on this little Chromebook and I didn't come in and look at the original. So
Oh.
I'll take your word for it. What about the total acreage of Robert's land? Is that specified anywhere?
No, and it should be irrelevant because they're getting an extra half an acre added to their existing property anyway.
So you don't think that provision applies? Let me see what it says. I just don't want to have it, if you need to add something, add it. It says, oh, maybe I can't find it that quickly. Hang on one second. Location, let me see. Proper name of record owner, area of each lot. Maybe that's what it says. So maybe the area, so that would be an area.
It'd be the area of the Roberts, the Roberts lot is a lot on an existing plan. And
right.
This is just an extra half an acre coming out of Linda's trust to the Roberts.
So think you need to state the area of that lot?
No, because whatever it is, it's gonna be larger than it currently is anyway.
It was.
Yeah,
All
yes,
right, well, you're the expert on this, I'm not.
well, thank you.
But I just wondered, I go down the checklist. All right, so I have another question, which is, and this may be like a clerical error on our part, but
Okay.
in the posting, there was another plan attached, a second plan that didn't have,
Oh, I know what it was. When I had scanned the plan, I had scanned another plan it was for another town at the
common
same time.
driveway.
Yeah, and they
You don't
mashed them
allow
into.
common driveways. Oh, okay.
No, and
All
I had noticed that. I said, oh, they mashed them into one file. I said, oh. I
Okay.
noticed that after I emailed the town of Ashburnham and town of West Hubbardston, so they got this one also.
All right, no problem there. Does anybody else?
Disregard.
Okay, no, that's fine, I figured that out after I scratched my head for a while.
Okay.
But there was no petition, that went along with it, so, okay,
Right.
so, has the rest of the board had a chance to look at the plan? I mean, I agree with him, these are basically big lots, 6 acres, and they're just shoving half an acre from one to the other, and it's in the back, so it doesn't
Correct.
affect frontage.
Bill has his hand up.
Okay, I want to hear from Bill, go ahead.
Just real quickly, the reason you're supposed to show the acreage is to prove that they're not creating a non-conforming lot by switching properties. That's why the zoning bylaw says you need to show the acreage of both properties.
But he's
But I
clearly.
mean, you wouldn't be creating a non-conforming lot because you're not taking anything away from the Roberts. Whatever they already own, they own. You're not taking anything away from them. They're just getting an extra half an acre added to.
Who are you
Whatever
taking the
they-
property from?
Excuse me?
Who are you taking the half acre from?
The abutter.
Linda White Revocable Trust. And
And you-
after the outlot gets conveyed to the Roberts, she'll have about 6.5 acres left and like 405 feet of frontage.
Right.
So-
I'm just pointing out the fact that the reason that's in there is the surveyor certifies that we're not creating, by taking from one and giving to another, you're not creating a non-conforming lot. If it's, Alice, if it's obvious, then I don't think it's a big deal. But, if you're taking a half acre from a 2 acre lot, you then left an 1.5 acre lot, which doesn't comply to zoning, and that's why that's in there.
Right. No, she had just over 7 acres to begin with.
Yeah, it is pretty clear. I
Yeah,
just
she
thought it
had a
was
big
black and
piece.
white, I'm a
Then it's just an
checkbox person. So,
administrative thing.
yeah, so I think, there's 2 things. You can approve the plan and you can add the note, which wouldn't be that hard, right? You just do the calculation.
There is a note saying that the remaining land does not create a non-conforming lot.
Okay, all right, well then let's let it
There was
go.
application on it.
Okay, we don't actually vote to approve this so much as to that it agree that it all meets all the requirements and we will sign it. So are there
Mhm.
comments from anybody on the board?
Madam Chair, just the only clarification I would like to have is that as it's stated in the plan, the Linda L. White Revocable Trust, where it in the bottom says is 6.5 acres. That is the remaining acreage post the transfer of the land. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Then I would make, I would agree with the fact that the Roberts lot, which is whatever acres it is, thus gaining 0.523 acres, is larger than than existing lot, and that the remaining lot is still within what we consider to be a conforming lot.
Right, the 2 acre.
Correct.
Great, okay, so ordinarily what we would do, Alex, and the public out
Mhm.
there, is you would have it on our table and we would run around and all sign it, right? So
Right.
that's, yeah, so that's why you don't need a vote, because we're all sitting there, we're all gonna sign it, but unless there's an objection from anybody on the board, I'll ask everybody, since we're still remote, to set aside time next week, because the office is closed tomorrow, to go in and sign this plan. Is that okay with everybody on the board?
It is on my side. I can make that time. As long
Okay.
as Mallory is available and we can coordinate that, yes.
And I
We're
Bill
wide
is-
open to the public, so Doors unlocked. You can just come in whenever we're open.
Oh, it is now. Okay. All right. So Alex, Mallory will get in touch with you when we've signed.
Great.
And if you don't hear, don't hesitate to call.
I know how to find that.
Madam Chair,
Yes. Bill?
um, yeah, point of order.
Yeah.
The elections are Tuesday, aren't they? Next week?
They are.
You are, on the date of the election, you are either a member or you are not.
Good point. We need to do this on Monday. Or Tuesday before the election, right, Bill?
I would suggest, yeah, Friday or Monday. Tuesday before the election, you might have to put the time that you signed it.
Mallory, is the office completely closed on Friday? Is anybody there?
Nobody's there.
Okay,
yeah,
so that puts the
Monday.
pressure on us, guys, Monday or Tuesday to sign. Mallory, can you send reminders
Sure.
out in emails and get us all there?
Sorry.
Yeah, no, thank you, Bill. I
Yeah, thank you, Bill. I never even thought of that.
things all the time, and there's no way I can keep everything in my head that's going on. All right, so I guess that matter's concluded satisfactorily. We'll all go down and sign and get it out to you by Tuesday. Okay, or
Sounds
Wednesday.
great.
morning. Yeah, okay, good. So that's done.
Thank you.
Thank you. We get to our major feature of the night, which is the public hearing on 69 Gardner Road. This is an ongoing hearing on a special permit and site plan review for a marijuana facility, outdoor grow facility, but I'm going to have Mallory read the introduction.
Great. So in accordance with provisions of Master General Law and the Hubbardston zoning bylaw, Article 22, the Hubbardston Planning Board shall continue a public hearing originally opened Thursday, April 15th, as provided under the governor's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, general law, chapter 30A, subsection 18. The planning board shall meet via virtual means Zoom to consider the special permit slash site plan application of Damon Schmidt Royal Sun Farm for a recreational marijuana cultivation. The subject property is 69 Gardner Road, Assessor Map 5, Parcel 153, consisting of 19.3 acres located within a commercial / agricultural district. This is a split zoned parcel. Damon, I have John here and Ron is here for you as well, correct?
Yes,
Awesome. Anyone else?
Joe Connors should be showing up in
Okay.
a little bit. So.
I'll promote him once he pops in.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, Damon.
Okay, and you want to check for other members of the public? I don't want to call on them yet, but
So if anyone wants to speak, we just need to do a raise of hand and I'll.
okay, of those groups. So if you're out there and you want to be heard, I just want to put things in context here, and then I will hear from the public. So I want to, again, call this continued public hearing back in session. And I want to say by way of introduction here, this is a special permit application and site plan review. Again, as was just read, for a marijuana facility at 69 Gardner Road. It was accepted by this board on March 18th, 2021, after some pre-reviews. The original hearing on it was April 15th, and that was continued to May 6th. And then it was continued again by agreement with the petitioner to May 20th. And here we are tonight, June 3rd. And I think it is really imperative that we vote tonight. And the reason for that is it's the last day of the extension, for one thing, although we will need a few more days to get a decision issued, whether it's positive or negative. But it's also the last meeting of the planning board for the year. That's the fiscal year, and the election occurs next week. So it's quite conceivable that after the election on June 9th, you won't have the same board. So I think it really is imperative that we take a vote tonight, and it's going to be perhaps difficult to get to that point unless we control the discussion. So on May 20th, I had made a list of all the issues that had to be resolved to the point where they could be stated in such a way that the board would know what they were voting on. So we didn't approve them, we didn't disapprove them, we just came to a point where we agreed on what would be voted on. And we went through those issues one by one. And just so there's no confusion, in several of those instances, the agreed upon terms between the petitioner and our board included things that departed from the standard zoning requirements of a commercial district. For example, the petitioner wanted a gravel road, and we discussed that, and if we were going to accept it as a term to be voted on, how that would be worded. So all of these, we reached agreement on all of these issues, except we were unable to agree on the water use issue. So that is the issue that's open tonight for discussion. And on May 20th, the board and the petitioners couldn't agree on the water use issue because we just couldn't agree on either how much was needed for irrigation or whether that amount could be safely withdrawn from the bedrock aquifer on the property where the well is proposed on this property. So there were a couple of reasons behind that. One is the petitioner was pretty vague about, and the board had no knowledge about, the quantity of water required to irrigate 50,000 square feet of marijuana. So the petitioner had stated in various amounts ranging from 3,000 a day, 3,000 gallons a day to 10,000 gallons a day. And another reason was that neither the petitioner nor the board knew how much could be safely withdrawn from this bedrock aquifer. So this became, and that second issue became very important on May 20th, when we had a member of the public and a direct abutter to the project from 24 Ragged Hill Road state strong opposition to the project based on his conviction that the required water usage would drain his well. His home is located at 24 Ragged Hill Road and abuts this property. And that would leave his family without drinking water. So that was his concern. And in support of that, he stated that his well had run dry and he had had to drill a new well over 450 feet deep and frack it. And still it just barely is able to, he's still just barely able to get enough, the 5 gallons of water a minute that's required. So he continues to suffer at least in dry times, and he had trouble getting the well certified, he said. So he says he still has issues. And as an example, he stated that when his neighbor left a garden hose on for 2 days, his well went dry again for a period of time. So I don't know whether that gentleman's here tonight, but that was sort of sparked our concern that we needed to address this issue more seriously. So we continued with the agreement of the petitioner to gather and present further information that would address the water use concern. And in direct response to our request for that issue, he provided a report from ProVenture Engineering LLC and a hand drawing suggesting a possible relocation of the well further from the Spigney property line. So those documents were given to Bill Murray of Places Associates, who's our consultant. He's had a chance to review those submissions. Those documents were also distributed to the board. So Mr. Murray's also prepared for us tonight 2 draft decisions, one that would be an approval and one that would be a denial of both the special permit and the site plan. And those have also been distributed to the board and I believe are posted. Are they, or they just were distributed, Mallory?
They're posted and distributed.
Posted and distributed. Okay. So, anyway, the plan for tonight, my plan for tonight, we'll see how it goes, is to limit public discussion strictly to the water use issue. So we've got time to really go through all the points in the 2 opposing documents. I would take comments from the public addressed to water use issue only and allow either Damon Schmidt, who's the petitioner, or anybody on his that's here supporting him tonight to respond again strictly on the water issue. Then I'll allow him, there are some other issues and I've been thinking of how to address this. I hope we had tied things up neatly, but since then, the petitioners asked for some very specific changes. And maybe I'll just let Bill pick them up, but they are particularly, some of them are bigger than others. One is he wants one of our terms was that the cannabis grown had to be 50% of a certain variety. And he wants it to be, had to be less than 50%, and he wants it to be equal to or less than 50%. Another agreement is that he wants the term of this special permit extended all the way out to 5/6/25 on the grounds that his host agreement expands that date. And then another term he wanted was to be allowed to have the reefer trucks be allowed there all year, parked over winter, which was not allowed in our original agreement, or in our original agreement to the terms. That would be a change. And also he wants a high volume set for a high use daily limit. He suggests 15,000 gallons. So those we can address. I think I don't know, Bill, I'll defer to you. Would you like him to address those items up front? Or?
No, I think the hydrogeoengineer is online, and I think that you might want to address the water issue as
Okay,
a stumbling block.
Okay, so we can pick up those other issues as we go through if we were to do the affirmative, as we go through the draft, the affirmative, right?
Right.
Okay, so I'll start with, and then, to finish it then, so then we'll have Bill walk us through each of these proposed decisions. Then we'll close off discussion and let the board deliberate among itself. Just among board members, but if we want to ask a question to Bill, we can do that. And that will end when there's a motion from the board to close debate and proceed to a vote. So we can, board members are free to do that, but generally you want the debate to be robust and let it, hit all the questions. And then I did want to tell everybody, approval of a site plan and special permit acceptance. I'm sorry, approval of a site plan and approval of a special permit, acceptance of a site plan.
Right.
They can be combined into one motion, and they both require 4 affirmative votes to pass. So the alternate member's vote does not count unless a member is either absent or recuses himself or herself for cause. So is that all correctly stated, Bill?
It is, and
Process.
you're missing Mr. Holman's.
No, I thought, okay.
Yep.
Okay,
I was going to point that out too. So Mr. Holmes is not here. That means that Erica Dack is indeed the
A
person-
qualified voter. Yeah.
Exactly.
I know she's attended everything very faithfully. Erica, are you here? Is she here?
She's muted, but she's here.
I'm here. I'm here.
Oh, you understand, you're going to be a voter tonight.
I sure
I
do.
thought-
Yep.
Yeah, I thought Bill would maybe show up while we were doing that A&R, but he hasn't. Okay, so we don't have any time to lose. This is quite complicated, and I want to be fair to everyone. So I'll start with, is there any member of the public that wishes to address this issue?
Anyone who wants to address needs to raise a hand so I can make them a panelist. All right, we have one, the Savigny's.
Okay.
Oh, I think I put Katie in. All right, Gordon is in.
Gordon, you're muted.
This is Gordon Savigny, the abutter, whose name I may be mispronouncing.
There you go, Gordon.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I was
The-
just, she said you had the geologist online. He was gonna talk about it.
I believe that's true. Is that right?
I'm
Don?
here. I'm here.
Okay, all right, go ahead. Yes, so Gordon, go ahead. Yes, he's here. Do you want to address comments to him?
Yeah, I'd like to hear what he has to say, because I live here. I know, I know the pains in it with the water issues. It's an ongoing thing, so.
So Bill,
I fear even now he's raised his limits to, he wants 15,000 gallons a day. at 3,000 gallons or 5,000 gallons, whatever he was saying, 10. It's just all over the board. But even at that, I think would have an issue. Because the way the water comes into my well is just super slow.
So Gordon, did I correctly summarize what you stated last time?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, so you've lived in this property for how long?
We've been here for 20 years.
Okay, and when was the most recent time you had any well problems, water pressure problems?
You can tell when it goes down, it takes longer for a recovery especially during the drought times in the summertime. Like I said, I run in the wintertime, I run a shallow well because the water tastes much better. But it gets down to a point where that is dry, and then I switch over to my deep well, and then that can go very low where it has a long time to recover.
Okay, well, I'm going to thank you for your comments, and I'm going to let Damon and his crowd speak, and maybe we could start with the person that's addressing this, all addressing the water issue, but the expert first, perhaps.
Great.
So,
I'll take it from here if you want, Madam Chair.
yes, you introduce yourself again, please.
Sure. Thanks for having me. My name is Don Preventure. I'm a professional engineer with Preventure Engineering. I've been in business over 20 years and in the field of water supply and wastewater for about 31 years. Mr. Schmidt had asked me to do sort of a hydrogeological evaluation of the withdrawal that he was looking at for his irrigation well. So I did this this memorandum. It's a 2-page memorandum. I believe the board has a copy of that.
Distributed, yes.
Okay, so I'll just go through and sort of hit some of the high points of the of this memorandum. The first thing is a detailed hydrogeologic well drawdown impact evaluation for any proposed well can't really be done because the well is not installed. So the real way to do that is to evaluate impacts on abutters wells during a pump test on the subject well. But obviously that can't be done at this point. So because of that, I looked at a few other comparisons that I think are relevant, and I can just go through those right now. So the first comparison is that this well is basically an irrigation well. My understanding is it's just subject to permitting with the local Board of Health. There's no state DEP permit. DEP only gets involved when there's a public water supply that serves more than 25 people. So DEP does not have jurisdiction here. However, I looked at this as if assuming that this was more of a worst case scenario, that it would have to be permitted with the DEP as if it was a public water supply. If this thing was going to be permitted as what's called a transient non-community public water supply, what DEP would require to be done is that I would have to identify existing wells in sensitive resource areas within an interim wellhead protection area. That's an IWPA. And that area is like a land protection area, wellhead protection area. And that is calculated based on the withdrawal that you're looking for in the well. So at 5,000 gallons a day, that IWPA radius would be 511 feet. And that's centered on the well. So from my understanding, that 511-foot dimension, that IWPA, if this well was going to be considered a public water supply, I'm not aware that there are any other abutting wells or any wells at all in that 511-foot radius from the subject well. So the reason I'm pointing that out is if we were permitting this well as a public water supply well, the DEP regulations would not even require me to have to calculate any impacts or try to determine any impacts to any wells beyond that 511 feet. And the reason is basically because the IWPA, again, is based on the withdrawal of the well. So the DEP would consider any impacts beyond 511 feet to essentially be negligible. So they wouldn't even require me to have to measure or determine any impacts to any wells beyond 511 feet. And from what I understand, the 28 Ragged Hill Road well is more than 511 feet from the previously proposed well location. I'm not sure, I haven't seen a plan that shows a new well location. If that well location is changed and it's actually further away from that abutting well at 28 Ragged Hill, then I think that the potential impacts would be even less because the distance would be greater. So that's the one thing I looked at. Secondly, I went on MassGIS has an online viewer called Oliver, and I went on there and I pulled down a map that is part of the submission that I sent over. And that basically what it is just a map that shows property boundaries, and it does show two streams that look like they have bordering wetlands associated with them. And the streams, one of the streams appears to be between the subject irrigation well and the abutting irrigation well at 24 Ragged Hill Road. So the significance of having a stream in between two wells is basically a stream typically acts as what they call in hydrogeologic terms a hydraulic boundary. And what that basically means is that typically when you pump a well, the well will experience drawdown when you pump it, as all wells do. And that drawdown will keep extending out, but it will typically be limited by a hydraulic boundary, such as the existence of this stream. So I'm just pointing out that it is significant that there is a hydraulic boundary between the subject irrigation well on this proposed development and the abutting well at 24 Ragged Hill Road. So, you know, I'm not, without doing the testing, I'm not able to confirm if that stream would act as a hydraulic boundary, but typically in hydrogeologic terms, that's what a stream is a hydraulic boundary. And that hydraulic boundary should help to stop the propagation of the drawdown from the irrigation well from going beyond that stream, if it is going to behave as a hydraulic boundary. And then third, the last thing I looked at was the 19 acres of land area that the subject site consists of. There's a certain amount of rainfall that falls on that property. Some of that rainfall runs off, but some of that rainfall stays retained on the property and infiltrates down into the soil, into the groundwater table. So looking at this property, and I assume that it was the worst case scenario would be that it was glacial till and rock outcrop. What that means is that glacial till soils, if it's a tighter soil, it's not as conductive hydraulically. That will reject a lot of the runoff, so that, or a lot of the rainfall as runoff. So the amount of water that is available to infiltrate is considerably less. So just so to put things in comparison for comparative terms here, there's approximately 46.5 inches of rainfall that falls in this part of Massachusetts. About half of that typically runs off as runoff, and the other half is available for recharge back into the groundwater table. So if this was sand and gravel, we could expect to get about 15.5 inches of recharge per year in the sand and gravel soils. However, because this is only, I'm assuming that this land, looking at it in the most conservative approach, is that if it's glacial till, only 5.25 inches per year of runoff or rainfall would actually infiltrate into the groundwater table. So I'm taking that 5 inches per year, multiplying it across 19 acres of land area. And basically that converts into an average of 7,420 gallons per day of recharge going into the water table. Now, again, this is on an annual average. You're going to get variations throughout the year.
What was that number again, please?
The available recharge is 7,420 gallons per day. So what I did is I just compared that number to the 5,000 gallon a day irrigation demand. And that shows that the amount of runoff recharge going into the groundwater table exceeds the amount of water that is being requested from the irrigation demand. Now, I understand there's some discussion here about a 15,000 peak number or something. And I did want to point out that, again, this is on an annual average that we're talking about here. So even though that number looks like the 15,000 number would exceed the 7,420 gallons a day of recharge, on a whole annual average here, you know, we're not going to be irrigating for, I'm assuming, into the autumn, all winter, and probably early spring. So all of that rainfall and that's recharging in that time of year when the irrigation well is not going to be running is going to feed the aquifer, and that water is going to be in the aquifer to be withdrawn at a later time during that year. So again, you know, it's kind of hard to compare the 15,000 gallon a day withdrawal number against the 7,400 gallon a day recharge number. But again, on an annual average, that 5,000 gallons a day would probably be less if you factored it in across the entire 365 days. So I just wanted to point out those comparative numbers. The amount of water going into the groundwater table exceeds the 5,000 gallons a day that's being requested for the irrigation demand. So that's really the summary of my letter. And at this point, without having a well installed to conduct any kind of pump tests and monitoring of any other offsite wells, you know, this is the best kind of approach that we can look at here, is some more qualitative comparisons. And that's kind of what I presented in this memorandum. So with that, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer some.
Madam Chair, I do have a question.
Yeah, Francois Steiger has a question for you. Go ahead, Francois.
The average rainfall numbers that you have quoted us at this point in time, as of when are they valid?
These are numbers that have been in existence probably for about the last 15 years. And this is, again, on an annual basis. So you're going to get some years where you're going to get more than 46.5. Some years are under 46.5. But these numbers are generally accepted in the hydrogeological field by, you know, many other hydrogeologists besides myself.
So would it be fair to say that these are current numbers and that the averages are changing on a year-to-year basis based on, as what you were saying, it's a 15-year view back, and so as a result of that, those numbers are pretty accurate at this point in time?
That's my understanding. Yes.
Okay, well, that's good to know. The other question I had, and I don't know if you have the details as to whether or not you have them, the well locations, because I did see that there's once again a change in the well location from what I saw more recently. Do we know how far this new well location is, and the old well location is from the hydraulic boundaries that you cite in the 2-page document that you prepared?
Yeah, I don't have exact locations from what I just kind of scaling I'm not sure where the actual well is on 24 Ragged Hill Road, but just scaling to where the house location is from where the irrigation well.
I'm
Um,
actually referencing the location of the well that the applicant has proposed to put in. How far is that from the hydraulic boundaries?
Oh, from the hydraulic boundary, I should be able to query this.
The stream, right? You're talking
Yeah,
about?
it's basically the stream that shows up on the plan to
About 500 feet.
the bottom of the page.
If I
basically.
look at the new well location map that that was presented, I mean, is there a color that I'm looking at that I need to see? Okay, fine, this is the stream, because I do see the wells. I'm just trying to understand where those wells are in relationship to those hydraulic boundaries. Don.
Yeah, so I believe that the hydraulic boundary is the wetland that exists. It's called out as the vernal pool in 100-foot buffer, I believe.
Okay.
Just beyond that.
Right, so I think, I can't tell what the distance is on that, but if you're looking at that plan that you're talking about, I can't see where the buffer zone is on there for scale, but hold on a second. So it's about 3/4 of an inch on the plan. And looks like the scale here is a 100 scale. So that buffer, I mean, that hydraulic boundary, it looks like it's only about 75 feet away from that well, from the irrigation well. Is that
Sorry,
accurate?
can I jump in here?
I
No,
wanna-
hold on, let me finish with
Yeah,
Don, please.
let Francois finish, but I will let you speak, Damon.
Yeah, I'm just gonna give the distance on the well.
Thank you. So I'm just looking at the very first well location, and then the second well location. I'm just trying to understand, because there's 2 well locations now. Trying to understand whether or not the second well is closer to that hydraulic boundary, or if it's even farther away.
I think the second well is closer to the hydraulic boundary.
Gotcha. But it is also further from the abutter who is making the case about their well running dry during certain times of the year, right?
That's right.
Thank
It's quite a
Okay.
distance away. Yeah,
Very, thank you. All right, you've answered my question. Thank you very much.
thank you.
Did you want to add to that, Damon?
Oh, I just wanted to say that, if Gordon's well is behind his house, like it looks like on the paperwork that I got from Mallory, the new well is about 1,000 feet from his well.
Okay, I have a couple questions, maybe other board members do too.
Oh, could I add one more thing? I'm sorry.
It has to relate to water.
Oh yeah, well, sorry, it's definitely water. So I keep hearing this 15,000. I just kind of want to be quoted correctly. So I sent that in as something we would never hit. My exact words are, or if we need to put something in there, put 15,000 gallons or something we won't ever hit. That 15,000 gallons was just a response. If you guys were really going to put in a per gallon day limit, put something in there I'll never hit. And I used 15,000 gallons as an example. So we'll never hit that. I was just wanted you to put something in that will never hit so I could never be limited. That's the point of that. So I had no point that I ever say we would use 15,000. It was the exact opposite. I said we'd never would.
Okay, taken.
Thanks.
So which well location are we considering tonight, Damon? We have this problem of shifting the goalposts, and we need to know what we're voting on.
I only shift the goalpost when people make me. So we moved the well because there was concern last time. So then
Bill, maybe you could help me out here. If he wants to change the well location, can we as a board consider a penciled in, this is it, and change it tonight?
The answer is yes, we can mandate that it be incorporate. We have some plan changes on the approval that need to be made, and we would simply mandate that the engineer revise the plans.
Okay, so So this can be done. Okay, so then
Yep.
back to Mr. Provenker, am I saying your name right?
Preventure,
Venture.
Provence, say it again?
preventure,
Preventure, sorry, accent on the wrong syllable.
no problem.
Yeah, can you tell me, because I'd be interested in this, is in aquifers in this area, and I realize you haven't done the study, but how many feet in an average year does the ground, in an average year, right? I mean, you've been able to give us rainfall, but how much variation is there in the groundwater? What's the lowest level you could expect it to read, the variance between the highest level you would expect, say right now after the big rainstorms in the spring, and the lowest level you would see, in maybe prolonged weeks without rain, maybe not a formal drought, but in the low season? How much does it drop?
Sure. So, that's a very variable answer depending on where you are on the site. But assuming this property is glacial till, what I would do is look at the analyses that I've done for septic systems, the USGS Frimter method, when you have to adjust for seasonal high groundwater. The variation in glacial till, I want to say, is probably at least 8 feet and maybe even up to 12 feet potentially.
Okay,
Is that, Bill, you're probably familiar with that somewhat. I don't know if you agree with that number, but that's
I
my recollection. You get
I
less,
totally agree.
yeah, you get less fluctuation in sand and gravel, more fluctuation in glacial till.
We did a project in Paxton, fine sandy loam, which is the state soil, oddly enough. And we got a 10.5 foot separation between seasonal high and seasonal low.
Mhm.
okay,
I have an additional question, if I may.
yes,
Don, you mentioned that the rainfall, obviously, some of it evaporates, then the rest of it hopefully will go into the ground. Once it penetrates the ground, I mean, some of it will create reservoirs underneath, but some of it will also stream away based on the fact that the great glacial till locations are not necessarily all even and all permeable. Is that a fair assessment? Or is that a fair way of saying it?
Yeah, I guess I would say is that it would percolate down through the sand, the glacial till soil, until it hits the water table, and then the water table will travel laterally and will typically discharge into a hydraulic boundary like a stream or a wetland that I mentioned before.
But only when it reaches a certain capacity, right? Because that is kind of the discharge when it goes into this hydraulic boundary, right? Because it
Right,
exceeds
so-
the capacity of the ground.
Yeah, so that's continuously, that process continually happening. There's always recharge going in the ground. It's hitting the water table, and the water table is always flowing somewhere where it actually surfaces, typically in a discharge boundary, whether it's a wetland or a stream or a pond or something.
Okay, so any rainfall falling on a given day will definitely, a percentage of that will actually percolate down, but will not stay in that location. It will actually be, it would move just based on the fact of how the dynamics of how this is, how the contours are and so forth, right?
Right,
So-
right.
so we're not basically creating a pond or a reservoir underground, but rather we really have to think of this here as something that is moving. And so as a result of this here, the reason I'm bringing this up is I have concerns still, and I'm not saying that we're going to be answering them, and I just have to make an educated guess on this here. That the 5.25 inch rainfall that falls in the air, which brings a capacity, as you were stating, over 7,000 gallons a day, does not necessarily mean that you're always going to have 7,000 gallons available underground, or is that what your assessment is?
Yeah, that's on average, because that's always replenishing itself. So the same amount of water that's discharging into the stream is also being replenished with additional rainfall that falls and gets percolated into the ground. So that's the hydrologic cycle, basically. It's always occurring.
Okay.
And there's a variation when there's less rainfall.
Yep.
There's a little bit of less recharge, and that's why we were talking about the water table dropping.
Yep.
And then in the springtime, over the winter and the spring, when the trees are not sucking up the runoff, there's a little bit more recharge available, and that builds up the water table when the snow melts and everything. So it's kind of like a cycle that's perpetuated, continually happening.
Thank you.
Sure.
Mallory, is Mr. Spigney still there?
Yeah, I was just gonna tell you, he's got his hand up to speak.
Okay, because I want to ask him where his well is and how far it is from the line. And I'm going to recognize him again. Go ahead.
Hello?
Hi.
Yeah, my well's probably about 500 feet from the river. Maybe less, 400 to 500 feet.
Okay, and from the property line?
Yeah, so it's on the front side of my home, 25 feet from the corner.
So it's in front of your house. I guess I don't know where your house is on the lot, so that doesn't help me very much. You think it's 400 or 500 feet from your nearest border with,
From the stream, yeah. That he's
okay.
talking about.
And
But,
the,
so,
yeah,
I'll go ahead, I'll let you finish and I'll,
is the stream that the hydrologist here was referring to, the stream that your artesian well was from, the non-bored well? That,
the non-board well is probably 200 feet from the river.
on your land,
On my
towards
land,
your
yeah.
land?
So that stream typically stops flowing in early July and is dry in August. Sometimes, depending on the rainfall, it can be in around now. But we've had a wet season, so there's water there. But typically, it will go dry, and that's where,
And that's when you resort to your other well.
yes.
Okay,
So-
what else did you want to add? Because
So-
I'll let you respond.
When I did my perk test up here, I just barely passed my perk test because of the soil conditions. So we actually had to take a jackhammer to dig my test hole for the Title V. So it's pretty packed clay and stone mixture.
Okay,
So it doesn't filter well, or it doesn't drain well. So it's not too permeable.
okay. And you had told me also that your lot is the highest point there, around in
Pretty
the
much.
surrounding area, right?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Any other board members have questions for either Don or Gordon? If not, I'm going to let Bill respond to that report in the water discussion. I know we're going to go through the decisions, but I'd like to air all the points of view on the water first. So, Bill Murray,
Hello.
hi. Can you respond to his report, what we've learned from that, what we haven't learned from that, which would be the better location? Just advise us.
Well, there's no question the better location will be the location furthest away from any adjacent well. I mean, that's pretty pragmatic. So that the revised location would be better because it actually pulls the well closer to the junction of two streams, one to the north and one to the south. So that's pretty straightforward. And so for the record, I spoke with Mr. Preventure, Don, was it a week ago?
Yeah, I think it was last week. Yep.
And we discussed this out so that we could both understand what the goals were, what I was trying to ascertain, and how he was going to answer the question. And that's the point of the report. And I understand completely what he's done. A public water supply is the highest rated reviewed well in the state, other than a major public water supply. So, for example, the Pizza Palace has a public water supply, and they have to report regularly to the state. The permit is issued by the state. So he's taken an analysis for a well type that doesn't even apply here. And he's done an analysis to say that if he were going to design a well for a public water supply, this well would be able to qualify at least for measuring distances and impacts on adjacent wells. And those criteria don't apply to an irrigation well or to just a single family home well. So what he's saying is there is no regulation, nor is there any reason to do a comparative analysis on adjacent wells because it just exceeds the criteria. But the bottom line here is this is a memorandum, and he's making some assumptions, and he's far more informed on this topic than I am and ever will be. But this is a series of assumptions, and I think Mr. Preventure will tell you that he can't assure the board. He can give them a reasonable feeling, a professional judgment, but he cannot assure the board that this well will not affect the abutters without doing an actual test. Don, am I right on that?
Yes, if you're asking my opinion, I think there's a far greater chance that there would not be an impact because of the three arguments that I presented. But again, the first sentence in my memo was that without doing an actual pump test, you can't be 100% sure about this. But I'm definitely more sure that especially with the relocation of this new well location being further away, and Damon and I did speak about that last week as well, and that's one of the reasons he wanted to move the well, and I suggested that would be a great idea. So I definitely agree with that, and I think that separation distance makes me a lot more comfortable that the impacts, there's far less chance of having impacts at that greater distance. So
then my follow-on question is, the planning board wants to know, is there a reason that they should put a restriction on the volume of water coming out of this well in order to avoid impacting a neighbor? I know that 3,000 gallons a day really is, in the big picture in geohydrology, is not a very big number. But 5,000 gallons a day, we're increasing the draw. And certainly 10,000 gallons a day, which was the number that they started with, saying that is a number they would never exceed. Are any of those numbers, do any of those numbers ring a tune with you, so to speak?
Well, I guess what I would fall back on is that 7,420 gallon per day number. That analysis about the available recharge from the runoff on an annual basis, that's done on a large scale when you're looking at, large water withdrawals, golf courses, municipal water supplies. And that's the first brush approach that's done just to do a reality check to see if you're mining water from the watershed that you're withdrawing. And as long as you stay under that available recharge number, that's usually the first approach, the reality check that you're not going to mine the water, basically. So
Okay, can you explain mining the water?
Mining the water, the explanation is basically pumping more water than what's really available to you based on the land area that is contributory to the well, or in this case, the land area that is available on the property. So as long as you're not exceeding the water you're taking out of the aquifer, as long as that doesn't exceed the water going into the aquifer, that's an acceptable approach to proceed with developing a well, even on, and I'm talking on a large scale public water supply system.
Right.
May I ask for a clarifying question on this here? So I understand what you're saying, and I think it makes a lot of sense. My question, however, refers to the fact that seasonality has an impact, right? And you mentioned it earlier, springtime versus summer versus drought conditions that typically happen during the summertime. I mean, if you keep under the 7,000 plus gallons, but you do that, you keep on pumping that during a certain time of the years, like for example, typically when we have drought conditions, would you therefore consider that there has to be sort of like a buffer in order to ensure that even during those times of drought that we are not exceeding the drawdown to the point where you would stress the amount of water, the water reservoir that you would have underground? I hope you understand my question.
Yeah, I think I do. There, you know, to call it a reservoir is a little bit kind of misleading, but it's essentially is what the aquifer and the groundwater table is.
Yes.
It's an area underground where water is held. That water does move, and when there's no water that replenishes the groundwater in a drought, that water moves away, and because it moves away, the water table drops. But again, on an annual average, by the time the drought is over, if we're in a drought, you have the additional rainfall that starts reoccurring. The trees stop growing and they start shedding their leaves. So that means they're not sucking up as much runoff anymore. And that's where the water table starts rising again.
Correct.
So that buffer action on a yearly basis is kind of what we're looking at when we're assessing the annual recharge to a well like this.
I'm just concerned that when we talk about the 7,000 gallons that we could theoretically take out without impacting this here. If you say anything underneath that, if we're doing this here in the middle of winter, I would understand, or maybe in the springtime, plenty. But does reaching that limit create potential stress during certain times of the year, specifically when cultivation is very high?
Yeah, so I don't think it has an impact on like a transient condition, because the water table is going up and down because of the seasonality, right?
Over the year, yes.
I would be concerned if we were trying to take 10,000 gallons
Okay.
continuously out of this, whereas the recharge is telling us 7,400 is sustainable.
Okay.
And
You've answered my question. That is fine.
Okay.
My point was I was just trying to understand whether or not there's seasonal impacts that would indicate to you that, well, maybe during the summer 7,000 is not something that we should be doing. And I'm just trying to understand. And I think the way you have answered this is it's not, right?
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other board members have questions for?
I do have one additional question. I'm sorry to,
Yeah, go ahead.
no, I'm and this is just a point of clarification. The new well location as indicated in newwelllocation.pdf, that is something that Damon Schmidt is proposing, and this is not something that has been, well, let me ask you this here. How did that point come to be there? Is this something that Damon suggested, you suggested, somebody else suggested? I'm just trying to understand how this came to be that particular point and not somewhere else.
I think that was the farthest point that we could put the well that was not within 100 feet of wetlands.
Gotcha.
And was as close as we possibly could get to the parking area.
Gotcha. All right, thank you.
Any other members of the board have questions for anyone here?
Nothing from me, Alice.
Shall we progress to review these potential decisions, because we're already an hour into this meeting?
Yes,
Can I
ma'am.
say one quick thing on water?
Yes.
All right. So I just wanted to remind everyone that I had sent an email in, or the neighbor, Linda, she's the neighbor to both Gordon and I. She's lived there for 50 years, and she sent the planning board an email saying for 50 years, she's never had any problems with her well.
What is her address?
10 Ragged Hill Road. It's right next to Gordon. She's our neighbor.
Okay, and is Gordon still on?
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, I want to ask him, do you know who your neighbor is? And you have anything to say of the relationship to her property to your property?
Yeah, her property is probably, she has quite a bit of acreage, and I'm probably maybe over 5,000 feet or further from her home.
At 5,000 feet?
Yep,
That's a
5,000 feet.
mile. That's a mile.
So she's at the top of Ragged Hill Road, three houses down. I'm down below. So I can't see her house. I mean, she's more in line with 63 Gardner Road than I am in line with her.
Okay, so it's not a near neighbor.
She's near the bus company, basically. That's where her property is.
Okay, all right. All right, I'm gonna, unless anybody objects, move to close the public part of this discussion and move. on.
Sorry, my lawyer joined late before you guys had said something about, having two decisions. I guess I'd like to know, how many people are usually available to vote and how many people do you guys have tonight? And then basically, I can't have a no vote. We have other avenues on this property that we can go down. So I guess, my lawyer hopefully has something to say, but, I would ask that we don't have a no vote and we be asked to continue it and change our plans, to get a yes vote. Because I think if we get a no vote, then aren't we shut down for 2 years? Then we have to go appeal this? Isn't,
Bill can answer that question better than me.
Correct.
I think you can't apply again.
It's a special permit.
yeah, so we don't want a no vote. I mean, we're not, we're coming in, we have a signed agreement with the town. So we should be able to, make some sort of a plan that you guys can agree on or tell us that you're gonna vote against it. And I did try to update my submission tonight, which, usually in a special permit, if it's in person, you can update things. I had a couple comments on some of the points that were in the denial letter. I mean, they're very, it would take me 30 seconds to read them. It basically has to do with, the odor and then what we could do. So I don't know if I could read this into submission or how we would go about that. Because there was some concerns on that denial letter that I could easily address.
Personally, as the chair here, I'd rather work through the approval letter and then through the denial letter, because I think there'll be comments on both.
All right, yeah, whatever you guys
So
think.
let's do the approval first and let you comment, and then we'll do the denial and let you comment.
Oh, all right.
And
Cool.
respond.
I wasn't sure if you guys were shutting it down and we weren't allowed to talk anymore.
I do want him to be able to progress all the way through.
Cool.
Okay, so unless you're asked a question by him for clarification, hold your comments to the end. And
I think
then.
we still have a hand up by the Savigny's. I don't know if they still want to comment on this here, or are we done? Or was this raised by an accident?
Yeah, it's still commenting. The water usage time frame, he's using the water in the driest season. So the heaviest usage is going to be where the water is less plentiful,
Mhm.
where the water table is down already. It's not, I mean, if he was using it in wintertime, there wouldn't be any problem, but it's the drought season. Like even other towns and municipalities, when there's a drought, they have a water limit. So they put on water restrictions for watering your land, watering other things. The water I use is for my drinking water and potable water. It's not for watering my lawn or doing other things.
Okay, thank you. Bill, do we need a vote to close discussion?
No, that's your call.
Okay, I'm going to move on and have you progress. I'm going to ask people to hold their comments until Bill gets a chance to walk us through the proposed approval document. Then we'll stop. Bill can ask some questions if they're relevant, like obviously there's going to be the well locations, a few other issues, but let's go ahead and go through it. So if this is the approval decision. we can do- Yep.
Just, I want to put things in perspective. This is my drafting of my understanding of the conversations that have occurred. It is not a statement of the board's opinion at this point in time. And the board has not made any of these findings.
Right.
So to say that the board has determined if we discuss the denial, this is my interpretation of what's occurred to date. And they are two distinct critters because the board has not made any findings. You're discussing the findings, whether you agree with them or not, because you'll find that the denial, of course, has common features and you're making a finding in an opposite direction where you're finding that something that they proposed is not suitable or correct. So just keep that in mind. You, the planning board, have not made these findings. This is my interpretation. And if you vote to approve, then of course you will incorporate these findings and they will become formal. So moving forward, just as a matter of clarification, I've made sure that anything to do with paper crane is removed. And I've corrected some board members' spelling of their names, even though the copies that you have don't incorporate that.
Bill, you're kind of breaking up a little. See if you can
Oh.
adjust your speaker. You're kind of breaking up.
All right.
See if you can adjust everything so you can avoid repeating. Or me.
All right. I don't know that we need to go through the board action, which is the grant of site plan and special permit, page 2, and a use permit for commercial marijuana. I've listed the meetings. Item 5.5 on page 3 needs to be edited because obviously Mr. Holman's is not present, therefore he's not eligible to vote. It needs to be identified whether the public hearing is closed or not and whether a vote was taken on the application. I've gone through the exhibits now multiple times and I think I've corrected and removed building renovation, anything to do with the paper crane. Exhibit 9 are in red because anything that's in red is a new submittal since our last meeting. And I believe I've caught everything in there that has been submitted. So really what I want to do is first go through the findings and make sure that every member of the board is comfortable with the statement as presented. What you'll find later on or during some of the findings are some changes in red that I have added. I've received comments from Alice and I've received comments from Mr. Schmidt. So I've identified those changes, but they're in red so that you can clearly see what is brand new and you've not seen it before. So 7, can you hear me well now?
Yes, it's better. Thank you.
Okay. 7.1 identifies the parcel. I did correct that. The site is in the commercial zoning district. It's a split lot. And I identify that the agricultural residential land is to the west of the commercial district. 7.3 are findings based on a ruling from town council, which we previously discussed. And I believe that they're an accurate restatement. 7.4 is that this is simply a commercial marijuana use is allowed subject to site plan and a grant of special permit. It's restating the obvious. The project is comprised of acreage. 7.5. 7.6 says that it is a developable site and no new pavement is proposed. Applicant notes that during harvest time, only 5 to 7 employees will be needed. We're leading that in the direction to address parking. 9 spaces are proposed. It will be gravel. And it will have no access to the public. Parking, loading, and access must be paid pursuant to the zoning bylaw for any future use. So you'll find that we say in the denial that what they're proposing for a driveway is not suitable. But under this one, you're saying that the gravel and the 9 spaces are suitable based on the information that they've presented. The site currently has 7.7. Site has no structures on it. Proposed are 3 temporary structures, 1 permanent accessory structure, 2 trailers for product storage, an office trailer for security systems, an office space, and a shed. The board finds that they are accessory structures which is what town council determined them to be. I was under the impression that the refrigerator trailers were allowed on the site only during the active cultivation of cannabis, and those shall be removed from the site at the end of the season, completion of final harvest. They shall not be stored on the site during non-cultivation periods. Mr. Schmidt, in his Tuesday letter, said that because of the fact that he's not going to get an early crop in, wants the trailers to stay on site this year throughout the winter. So I've just listed that there. The site will not result in wetland alterations, and restating that the Department of Conservation has said that this is an agricultural use, and the Conservation Commission has issued an order of conditions so that we don't need to go down too much of a road there. The environmental and community impact statement sufficiently address impacts to the town, and the board finds that with supplemental safeguards and conditions, the project will not have an adverse impact on the environment and the community. And of course, those supplemental conditions are the conditions of approval.
He's almost waiting the emergency room, so.
Okay. Sorry. Background there. They meet the density requirements 7.10, 7.11. That the motion activated lighting will not be directed towards the neighbors. 7.12. They're going to use a fertigation system for the growing of the cannabis, and they've submitted a spill control fertilizer application plan, and they have been reviewed and found to be in compliance with the standards. So 7.13 is the water supply issue, where we identify that he initially estimated 10,000 gallons a day, but it's modified 3 to 5. We note that the town of Hubbardston has identified private well use and water yields as a limitation on development within the town. And then I identify that a direct abutter informed the planning board that his well had run dry. In response, they had a memorandum from Proventure Engineering. I summarize Mr. Proventure's statements, and then ultimately the board finds that the requirement for private property owners in the town of Hubbardston to have on-site wells to accommodate the basic requirement of potable water is of paramount importance to protect. The board finds that the proposed relocation of the well on site, along with the professional opinion from Proventure Engineering, will act to mitigate and or prevent impacts on the abutters well, subject to the need to impose reasonable regulations on the draw of the well on a daily basis. I really think that is where we ended up with our last conversation just a few minutes ago. Site plan approval, you find that the project will have an acceptable level of community environmental impact and will be consistent with land use objectives of the town and will comply with applicable local bylaws. 7.15, you find mandatory findings required by Article 9 for site plan approval. 7.16, marijuana, you find that the application meets the requirements. 7.17, I've changed this ever so slightly, and I'll read it to you. The board finds that the site is suitable for Tier 6 marijuana growing operation, which allows up to 50,000 square feet of canopy as defined by 935 CMR 500 and Article 22 of Hubbardston zoning bylaws. I've added definitions for the purpose of this finding. The following definitions shall apply. Canopy is the area occupied the plant, its roots, and growing medium as defined by the Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commission. Field area. Field area includes the canopy area plus the areas needed to access and support the growing operation, includes access aisle, cart paths, and other support areas for the growing of cannabis. So to make it clear, canopy is defined by the Cannabis Control Commission, and the field area is the area contained within the fence or whatever it is that's for the growing of the marijuana crop. So then we say the maximum total field area for the growing of marijuana in the residential district shall not exceed 20,000 square feet and a total canopy area of 10,000 square feet. A maximum field area for the growing of marijuana in the commercial district shall not exceed 70,000 square feet and a total canopy of 40,000 square feet. And what the applicant has in the residential district is they're proposing a field area, which is to say they're going to grow 10,000 square feet of canopy in an area occupied by 36,000 square feet in the residential district. So what this finding will do is, and we do say, item C, the board finds the remaining land contained in the secure fence enclosure shall not be used for canopy or field area. It shall only be used for support services and spaces, et cetera, et cetera. So that we're asking him to define on the plans where the field area in the residential district is, and that the support area to grow shall not be greater than 100% of the canopy area. And then the other areas are designated as non-field areas, they're non-grow areas. So that's where his employees will hang out and they'll do whatever, but it's not, we're trying to minimize the intrusion into the residential district, and that's what this finding and the follow-on conditions do. And then the standard condition, the approval shall not be deemed by approval by the Board of Health, et cetera, et cetera. Do you want to go through the standard conditions, or do you want to back up to the findings? Anybody have an issue with the findings?
Well, I think I guess the question is, can the changes the board's going to have to put as discussion items on this? What do we think about the changes, right? Are we going to put a limit on the gallons per water that can be drawn based on the discussion tonight? Are we going to allow trailers to be overwintered? Are we going to allow, we didn't get to I didn't see you address how long the permit lasts. Where is that?
That's later on. That's not a finding. That's a condition criteria.
Okay. So I would just assume you finished up, but I left as issues that the board has to decide is the trailers, the draw limits, the field and support areas. I guess that is what we had discussed though, right? But whether, I'll also let Damon have a chance to comment on it. What were the other things that were?
I do have a quick question regarding the, no, it's actually Exhibit 9, so it really precedes this here. And so the very first question I have for you, Bill, is Exhibit 9, item F, US EPA Notice of Intent and Construction General Permit. I'm assuming you reviewed that. Are you in agreement with all of the contents in there and that this was submitted complete and as accurately as possible?
They only gave me the notice of filing, which is a 2-page electronic form, a screenshot. And I looked at it, and the first 3 things that they had put in there said they were exempt. So no, I don't agree with it, but they did file for a notice of intent under the US EPA. So
I saw that. And then I also saw that there's a question here very specifically that says, have earth disturbing activities commenced on your project? Their statement says no. Would you agree with that?
I wouldn't, no, because they put in the driveway.
Precisely. Okay. I just want to note that for the remainder of the board, that there's some documentations that has been presented here as exhibits evidence. And I'm not stating that this is correct or incorrect. I'm just simply stating that this is information that was submitted to the US EPA.
Okay. So I think that the issues that are at variance from what we had agreed upon would be voted on tonight.
Yeah.
On 20th are the trailers, the limits on the draw, maximum and daily, if they're going to be different. The plan with the support areas, I'm not sure whether we address that and the well location. Would that be correct, Bill? Do we
Yes.
need to revisit?
Yes,
Okay, so because it was Damon that was disagreeing with the field area, correct? Restrictions in the.
Right.
He didn't want to put the fence up. You had it fenced, demarked by a fence or something. What was the issue?
that's later on, yeah.
Okay, all right, so I have those four. Why don't you continue on? So where are we now?
We're on page 9 of 15, 7.19 standard conditions. And these are all pretty basic. The decision shall be filed at the registry of deeds. A copy of the decision shall remain on site. Prior to any commencement of site work, which has already started, the applicant shall submit a written confirmation from the tax collector. All taxes have been paid. So I can state that they submitted that when they made the application. That really wasn't the intent. The intent was prior to the initiation of real construction, site work. Prior to the building permit, the applicant shall fund an account to cover the cost of regular construction and project closeout. And we list land clearing, post clearing prior to site construction, regular construction inspections, and inspection prior to a certificate of occupancy. And Mr. Schmidt his statement says, this seems like overkill for this project and a waste of time setting up an account that should be taken out.
Okay,
I defer to the board on that. Changes to the project shall be reviewed by the planning board or their agent. If such changes are significant or minor, significant changes require public notification and hearing at the project at the applicant's cost. Moving on, should the board determine changes proposed are not significant, they shall be determined to be minor and noted on any as-built plan. On the 1-year anniversary of the issuance of the permit holder shall provide the planning board a written report of the status of the project, including site-related maintenance as occurred, photographs of the site and access, which you have incorporated on your last 3 or 4 special permits. The planning board hereby reserves the power to modify or amend the terms and conditions of approval on the petition of the owner, leasee, or mortgagee of the premises, or upon its own motion for cause. All provisions of this paragraph applicable to approval shall, where appropriate, be applicable to such modification or amendment. Such power is reserved. So this is the phrase that we use frequently, and we refer to it many times, that if there is a violation, then the planning board has the power to reopen a public hearing to address any violations. And the following one is to say, violations of the permit issued by other agencies of the town are hereby incorporated into the permit criteria as permissible by law as part of this permit. Should a violation or non-compliance of any such other agency permit take place, it may be considered a violation of this condition, and therefore this permit. The board herewith reserves the rights identifying condition number 8, which we talked about above. The permit does not, number 10, permit does not authorize removal from the site of any earthen materials and is subject to the town's general bylaw for earth removal, chapter 1019. Hours of operation of the facility shall be limited Sunday to Saturday from dawn to dusk. During harvest periods, extended hours may be necessary and accepted for a limited time frame during harvest periods not to exceed 2 months' time in a calendar year. The hours of operation shall not be modified without the consent of the Hubbardston Planning Board as the site plan granting authority. The building commissioner shall have authority to enforce these requirements. Number 12, special condition on the sale of the property, which we have added to many of our special permits. And I don't want to read it all, but if somebody wants me to, I will. It just simply says that they have to notify the town of the transfer, and we have to know who is the proposed owner, the details of the transfer. Are they selling rights? Are they selling title? Are they selling components? Transfer dates, point of contact for the new owner, the previous owner, and notification to the assessor's office. And if they fail to do so, then they're in violation of the permit. Prior to the commencement of any site work, we have multiple conditions. Pre-construction on-site meeting shall be held with the applicant, construction site superintendent, building commissioner, planning board. I would suggest that since the site construction is pretty much along, that may or may not be needed. Prior to commencement of any site work, the contractor shall address what chemicals, hazardous, or toxic materials will be on site, their intended use and anticipated quantities. All chemicals stored on the site shall be in a locked container with a minimum 100% secondary containment volume. Spill kits of a sufficient number, volume, and material for the chemicals shall be provided and accessible for the duration of construction if hazardous materials are present. It's dry, I know. The hours of construction, which are not the hours of operation, hours of construction of 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. or dusk, whichever is earlier, Monday through Friday, and 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. on Saturdays, unless specific approval is granted by the building commissioner. Saturday work shall specifically prohibit trucking to from the site. This does not prohibit site activities related to erosion control, stormwater management before, during, or after a rainfall event. Item 16, the contractor shall supply sanitary facilities appropriate for the number of workers on the site. And that, of course, is a Board of Health item, but it's a pretty standard condition. Signage with emergency contact information, both during construction and when operational, shall be posted at the access gate. Building inspector shall confirm all signs meet the requirements of the town of Hubbardston signage bylaws. During construction, town officials or their designated agent shall have the right to enter the subject property to conduct inspections. Inspections shall not be limited to one topic, but shall be to determine compliance with the issued permit related conditions. The inspecting official shall notify the contractor of the inspection and shall be applicable to safety standards. 19, all stumps / wood waste not stockpiled on the site for later use shall be disposed of in accordance with Mass wood waste policy. No stumps / shall be buried or burned on the site, which is the Mass wood waste policy. No debris, junk, rubbish, or other non-biodegradable waste materials shall be buried or burned on portions of the land within the limits of work, and removal of same shall be required prior to any commercial operations. Any fill material imported to the site shall be clean fill and shall not contain hazardous materials, meeting the requirements of the town's importation of materials bylaw. I'm abbreviating so we can go through this quicker. All erosion control measures, including temporary settling basins, shall be maintained until the site is fully stabilized. The contractor shall be responsible for keeping sediment from the site from draining into adjacent wetlands, collecting onto the abutting roadway, and shall be responsible to sweep the street if necessary. The board requires that during construction, all vehicles servicing, delivering, or parking for the project do so in an indicated area on site. No on-street parking, standing, delivering, or staging for the site shall occur on Gardner Road or surrounding public ways at any time during the construction of the project or during its commissioning. No idling of construction vehicle in excess of federal and state standards shall be permitted in parking, staging, or other non-construction related areas. Fueling of any vehicles on site shall be conducted in a manner to ensure no spillage or leaching of fuel shall occur into the ground or allowed to run off to adjacent areas. The applicant agrees to comply with zoning criteria 5.3D11, where all vehicles entering and exiting the site will do so while being driven in a forward direction. No backing down the access drive for deliveries or staff is allowed. Signs in parentheses 2 shall be posted on either side of the driveway at the entrance that clearly read "No backing, please take notice." These signs shall remain and be maintained. Upon completion of the project, but prior to final occupancy, an as-built plan shall be submitted. The site shall be loamed and landscaped, et cetera, et cetera. Additional special conditions. Special permit is valid for a term of 3 years from the date of issuance. Should the applicant desire to continue the uses granted by this permit after the three-year period, they shall petition the board for an extension of the permit a minimum of 3 months prior to the expiration of the permit. The board shall require notification of abutters, advertisement in the newspaper, common circulation, public notice for a public hearing to receive input from abutters and other interested parties. The board should then be able to extend, modify, or revoke the permit as issued based on updated findings developed from the public hearing. And Mr. Schmidt has asked that the special permit be extended to coincide with the expiration of its host community agreement on 5/6/2025. And I know in our zoning bylaw, we don't allow special permits for a period of greater than 3 years. Then we go to water usage. The water usage for growing and other on-site uses shall be limited to 5,000 gallons per day to protect adjacent properties, wells, and water supplies. The applicant shall monitor the daily rate of withdrawal and provide the board with a summary of daily rates upon request. Failure to monitor daily well withdrawals shall be considered violation of this permit. And this is where Mr. Smith explained earlier that he'd like to see a 15,000 gallon per day, which is a number he would never hit. And he clarified that he wasn't proposing to pump 15,000. I don't know if you mind, but the cover crop, the applicant has indicated a cover crop will be grown, et cetera, et cetera. And then we define what a cover crop is. And we require that it be installed no later than November 1st. And the reason for that is we don't want erosion from the fields. Other crops, this approval is for commercial marijuana growing and harvesting processes. While the site is a commercial marijuana project, no crops other than marijuana and the above listed cover crop shall be grown on the site for commercial agricultural uses. The addition of other crops will be considered a modification for item 6 below. Perimeter security fencing shall consist of 8-foot chain link fence topped with barbed wire. Razor wire shall not be used. Modification to the growing areas, operations, or site-related changes shall require modification of special permit issued herein at the time of the proposed change. Monitoring, which we did discuss the last time, proposed use calls for a specific square footage of growing area, which is difficult to monitor. Accordingly, the board requires that the applicant at their own expense shall conduct aerial photography of the site in a manner that depicts the entire growing area in a single digital photo. The applicant shall cause to be placed 3 monuments that should be clearly visible from above. Such monuments shall be depicted on the as-built plan. They shall be maintained and referenced in all area photos to provide scale and location controls. The digital photos shall be of such a resolution that individual plants and footpaths are clearly able to be discerned. Digital photos shall be taken at the time of planting, during the initiation of harvest, and other times if so required by the board. The photos must be provided to the board within 30 days of the image capture. If more than one crop occurs in a single growing season, photos of each crop shall be taken. Failure to take the photos shall be considered violation of the special permit.
And that's it. Nope.
Yep.
So you got ahead of me.
Page 14,
Okay,
number 7.
thank you. Got lost.
I'm trying to go as fast as I can.
No, I know. They're all, important, and we just got it. I mean, we didn't even have a chance to really read it, so it's helpful.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Odor control. The board acknowledges that the growing of cannabis is a natural process that may have significant odors both during the growing process, harvesting, drying, and processing. The planning board finds that in order to mitigate cannabis odors, site will have an acceptable community and environmental impact, the following steps must be taken. And only majority dominant, and I changed it to greater than 50%. I changed it to greater than and equal to, using the mathematical symbol. 50% indica varieties will be planted, as these are quick growing, early harvest varieties or auto flowering varieties which meet the greater than 50% indica standard. No skunk varietals shall be grown on the site. Harvesting will occur early before plants reach full maturity and full odor producing ages. Complaints pursuant to the requirements of zoning section 7.1, section 8.4a, and section 9.7, where the conditions for granting a site plan approval and special permit require that the board assess and provide mitigation for impacts on the neighborhood. If the planning board or the Board of Health receives 3 or more credible complaints about the odors from the operation, the planning board will require the applicant to attend a public meeting to address the complaints and advise what operational changes will be made to mitigate the odor. The rights reserved by condition 7.8.8 are specifically reserved under this provision. As I recall, the planning board wanted to defer all the complaints to the Board of Health. And I still have in here, if the planning board or the Board of Health receives 3 or more credible complaints. Do you want to keep going or talk about that?
I guess since that's one that directly affects us, I'll take questions on it. Are there thoughts on that? I personally favor allowing complaints to be filed with us because we made this, we approved it as well as the Board of Health, but anybody else want to weigh in?
Madam Chair, I think that we are in charge of making sure that odors are odors are part of the criteria that we are, that has been included in our bylaw. So I do believe that it is our obligation as the planning board to manage that. My personal opinion.
How you read it with both of them being in here?
Yeah, if the planning board or the Board of Health receives 3 or more credible complaints about odors.
Okay, unless there's objection from the board, let's leave it that way. Any other board members? We have so many issues here. I'm really afraid of being here at midnight. Okay. We'll leave it, Bill. That's decided.
Noise control. The proposed activity will generate noise as a result of commercial activity of raising, harvesting, and storing cannabis. Excessive noise may have a negative effect on the neighborhood and detract from the residents' peaceful enjoyment of their residentially zoned properties. So again, we really just go through complaints, planning board, Board of Health, and you will have the option to open a public hearing and address it. Number 10, security plan approval. Prior to the initiation of any plant propagation or planting, the applicant shall obtain from the police chief a letter of approval of the security plan addressed to the planning board. Such letter shall specifically state that the police chief has reviewed the 69 Gardner Road security plan and approves it. We do that a lot on other projects like this.
Yep.
So this way, it is not the security plan is not a public document, and we've received affirmative review from the police chief.
Okay.
And then we have Plan 8. We'll add one to this. The board requires the following plan changes be made prior to the issuance of a building permit or initiation of site construction. 20,000 square foot growing area proposed with the agricultural residential district shall be depicted on an updated plan and shall be located in the northerly portion of the site to increase the offset to the abutters. There shall be installed an intermediary fence between this grow area and the remainder of the fenced area, the fenced secured area, approximately 16,000 square feet. The remaining area shall be maintained as support surfaces and shall have a permeable surface, be grassed or stabilized with other vegetated permanent surface. And Mr. Schmidt, in his 6-1 review, stated that he's not willing to install an intermediate fence in the residential growing area between the field area and the support services area. Number 2, a note shall be added to the plans indicating that the refrigerator trailer shall remain on site only during active cultivation and be removed as part of the final harvest process. They shall not be stored on the site between the months of November to April of any year. And again, Mr. Schmidt has said that for this year, he considers that not a criteria that he's able to support. And then there was, what was the third plan modification?
Look, relocation of the well,
Relocation, oh, well, thank you.
as shown, and you can put his plan as part of this, right?
Right. And
Okay.
then that is it.
And then you've got, okay, so I guess board members,
Except for the spelling of somebody's name.
yeah, we can go through this and perfect what we would and would not allow. And maybe that's what we do, because again, my goal is to get something we could actually, so you knew what you were voting on, right? But if other members of the board want to proceed to go through the denial letter, and have that basic vote approval or denial, and the approval being ironing out these terms that remain. I guess we could proceed in that way too. What's the feeling of the board? Nobody wants to speak. You want to know what you're voting on? Shall we go through and hammer that out quickly?
My preference is to at least hammer out some of the obvious items. I think the gallons per day, the special permit is another
Okay.
one. The well locations, things of that nature. I think those are things that we should all agree on as to whether or not they should be included as part of this here.
All right, so let's begin at the top. Bill, you can cite, Bill, scroll up too and help us with this, all right? So the first red flag, let's see. I have, where does it?
7.7,
7.7, what page?
7 of 15.
We're concerned about all this red. Oh, these were just documents submitted later, Exhibit 9.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, that's Exhibit 9.
Okay, so where are we? 7.15?
7.7, page 7 of 15. And,
Okay, fine.
and it also relates to plan modification 8.2 on page 15 of 15. Which is simply that he doesn't want to move the trailers this year.
But then for his other 4 years, he would remove them. Is that what you're saying? I guess we addressed that to Damon.
Yep, I defer to him.
Hi, I guess maybe it got a little, sometimes I'm not so clear. So our intention is to fill the trailers up and then move them to either process them in Royalston or to sell them to another company who would then process them. The reason why we got 2 trailers is that was about the maximum that we thought that we could have in a full year's harvest. In a full year's harvest, we would have to start growing in May. So now we're hopefully growing in July or August, and there's no way in the world, I don't think, that we could fill up both trailers. So I'm just saying, if I only filled up 1 trailer and then I move 1 trailer, do I really have to move the other trailer? I mean, if you guys want me to move the trailer, we can move the trailer. But I'm just saying, the point of moving the trailer is when it had a harvest and it was full, and there was a reason to move the trailer.
Well, why not just bring 1 trailer at a time?
Because the trailers have to be installed with security and they have to be put in place. And then the Cannabis Control Commission comes through and checks your security, checks everything, and then signs off.
Okay,
So
so
Yeah,
Question.
after they sign off, you're done. You just,
Question, what happens with these trailers during the winter from a security perspective?
well, there's nothing in them. So the trailers, they're freezer trailers. So what we're doing is taking the harvest down and flash freezing the marijuana so it's frozen. And
So-
what we do is right before we flash freeze it, we take a sample and send that off to a company that tests the product. The
What you're
moment that, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
So what you're saying is even if there is only a partial load on that trailer will be removed.
Yes, and I mean, I'm expecting and hoping that by the time we put it into the trailer, those trailers will be moved within a week. That's our hope. So they
Okay.
really should only be on for a week with, something in there, and then they'll move. But over the winter, we won't have anything on the property.
So these trailers will not be functional at all if they are completely empty, meaning there's no generator running, there's nothing running in there that would make noise or anything of that nature, correct?
We don't expect them to only turn on during harvest.
that was a double
It's a
negative.
freezer, so we wouldn't have the freezer going if there's nothing going inside of it. We would just shut it off.
Well, here again, we have this problem we've had from the day one, sort of dealing with this. It's like herding cats. Do you want us to leave this in and vote on it? Is it being there? And don't answer, well, if it's a yes, no, I'll take it out. You got to make a decision here. You want an exception for the first year?
Yes, just for the
Consider
first.
that. Okay, so to my board, we are voting to leave in his request that the trailers would not be moved this year. This year would be would be until what date? Till the harvest next year, till September 2022?
Unless we have a building. If a building goes in there, which is our next special permit, as soon as the building goes in there, we'll get rid of the trailers. But-
Okay, but I want a date on this.
We
September-
don't care about the next phase.
All right.
Right,
Does not matter.
will not be moved until, give me a date, Damon.
They will not be moved until next year's harvest.
Which
Okay,
we
which-
say is November 1st for the others.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, November's really late.
November 1st, 2020. Okay,
No, 2022.
2022, correct.
And then the other
Okay.
thing I think we need to make sure here is that it very clearly specifies that these have to be empty trailers.
Okay, you don't expect to fill them at all? I thought they would be filled with a partial.
Oh, we're hoping to.
No, what I'm saying here is that it says to review that the draft permit notes that the trailers will not be removed this year. It's only the empty trailers will not be removed this year.
Correct. If there's anything in there, it gets removed.
I just want to make sure that that is stated in there.
Because otherwise, Damon, you would have to run the freezer units all year long and you'd create the noise, right? So they have to be shut
Oh,
down.
yeah.
Yes, or if
That's
he doesn't have a buyer or whatever else, from a reasons perspective. I just want to make sure that those trailers are absolutely empty. There's no product in them.
100%.
So,
Okay,
Mr.
so
Steiger, what I've written is all trailers to remain shall be empty.
Correct.
Real short and sweet. Yeah, and I did add trailers may remain for the first year to be removed no later than November 21st, 2020.
Precisely.
2022, you mean?
2020.
2022.
It's
I wrote
contained.
it right.
all right, so we're down to the next issue we're dealing with is
713.
713. And really, quite frankly, you simply have to agree that the logic that's presented here is an acceptable logic because it's a finding, not a condition.
I
I
think
don't
the
get it. What are you asking? What are you saying, Bill? Finding.
So you're making a finding, you're making a declarative statement that you've done your homework and you've looked at the open space plan, and you have heard an abutter complain, and in response, the applicant has hired Preventure Engineering, who has made a professional judgment statement.
I get it. Okay, I get
So
it.
really, it's the last paragraph of this whole blue, just above 7.14. The board finds that the requirement for private property owners in the town of Hubbardston to have on-site wells to accommodate the basic requirement of potable water is of paramount importance to protect. The board finds that the proposed relocation of the well on site, see Exhibit 9-1A, along with the professional opinion of Preventure Engineering, will act to mitigate and/or prevent impact on the abutters well, subject to the need to impose reasonable restrictions on the draw of the well on a daily basis. You just need to agree that that's what you want to say.
I have a question for Bill.
Okay.
Bill,
Yes.
in your statement above, I mean, under what Mr. Dom Provencher had indicated here, it says, in summary, when considering the three perspectives offered above, a 5,000 gallon per day irrigation withdrawal would not be expected to cause offsite impacts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's no mention at all here with regards to the top limit. Is there any reason why that was potentially left out?
You mean the 7,400?
Yes, sir.
Because I inserted my judgment and said, if he says 7,400, I think the planning board will be much more comfortable if we limit it to 5,000. And Damon has said multiple times now, 3 to 5 is okay.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, so this is our finding that we've done everything we can to protect the neighbors, and we think weighed it in our judgment, they're protected. All right,
Exactly. To the best of your ability.
okay, if we grant this, we have to have that kind of finding. Okay, I get it. All right, so now where are we going with this?
It didn't
Madam,
put,
Madam Chair, just for clarification, because we have both this and then we have the following,
Denial.
well, no, not the denial, the special condition. So just to get clarification on what Mr. Murray was saying, that this section is just the reasoning and it's not attempting to set any kind of limit or any kind of restriction on usage. Is
Right,
that what you're saying?
I am saying that. I'm saying you are giving the justification for the last sentence in that paragraph. I'm having trouble glare on my page. Subject to the need to impose reasonable restrictions on the draw of the well on a daily basis. So you are explaining that we've received professional input, you've looked at it from many different perspectives, but you still reserve the right to impose reasonable restrictions on the draw of the well on a daily basis.
Okay, thank you.
So this takes us to 5.4, correct?
Yes.
Okay, to Damon, I don't see us waiving these restrictions. Because they're standard restrictions we require of everybody.
Well, actually, we need to go to 717, page 9. I didn't make it red,
Oh,
but this is the field area versus you're making an affirmative statement here that his field area in the residential district is restricted to 20,000 square feet, not 36,000 square feet as shown on the plan.
Correct.
So 717, page 9 of 15.
which is it B in that?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, this we hammered out on May 20th, I thought, and we had an agreement. Maybe there was no agreement. So Damon, this is, you can grow your 10,000 square feet. It's allowed in the residential district on 20,000 square feet of land. Is that correct? The total canopy?
The total canopy is 10,000. The field cannot exceed 20,000.
Correct. Within the residential district, because
Right.
right now he's got 36,000 of field area, which is 10,000 square feet of canopy and 26,000 square feet of support area. And what we're trying to do is say you will define the field area within which you will grow marijuana, and the remaining area will be defined as non-grow but support services.
And we actually had this discussion because we also described, I think Damon can correct me, but agreed to try to plant the crop away from the abutters as an odor mitigation measure.
Yeah,
there.
that's plan change 1.
So what is it that you're objecting to? We need to make that finding. Is there a problem with that? I know there was the problem, he doesn't want to fence it, and so you went for aerial photography.
I look the
Some kind of verification method. that
Yeah.
You're only gonna.
Yep.
Okay, so Damon, your plant area is twice your canopy area, but not 3 times. And you're gonna move it over towards the neighbor, that is it? I'll
Correct.
just state that anyway.
away from the neighbor.
Away
Right.
from the neighbor.
Away.
Maybe,
Okay.
maybe that needs to be added, the grow area shall be,
That's the plan modification.
okay.
yeah.
Okay, if it's in the plan modification. Okay, so we've now gone through that.
Yep.
We're down to 5.4.
Can I interrupt for a second? I just want to make sure we do it the right way. I'm sorry. You mind or?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I just want to kind of point something out that this town attorney had pointed out, that once we go into that extra 50 feet of extension from the commercial zone into the residential zone, the town attorney had made a note of it as well, that in the residential zone will actually push us over 10,000 square feet. But that extra square footage is in that 50-foot extension zone. So I had sent the other day, and I got a little yelled at, but I had sent, a copy and paste of the town attorney, Nicole, saying that. So if you look at our plans, our 20,000 square feet of growing area and 10,000 square feet of canopy is solely in the residential zone. It doesn't include the square footage that would be in the residential zone, but considered in that 50-foot extension of commercial zone. So that's why I pointed that out the other day, because I wanted to make sure we were all on the same page. So
So
I'm
what you
agreeing
really
with,
want to do is you want to grow 20,000 square feet of canopy in the residential district, correct?
well, in the back area, we want to have a 20,000 square foot area where we can put 10,000 square feet of canopy in the residential area. Correct.
You want to put 10,000 in the residential area, and you want to put another 10,000 in the 50 feet of the residential area that you're allowed to expand into.
Correct. It'd probably only be maybe 3,000 or 4,000 feet of
So what
canopy.
you're really saying is you want to put 20,000 square feet of canopy in the residential zone. Half by allowed and half by, all right, and
No.
half by your 50-foot extension.
No, so that's what I wanted to clarify. So the town attorney in her letter said that I could actually end up with more than 10,000 square feet of canopy in the residential zone. And that's why I'm double checking with you to make sure that the town knows what we're talking about.
How many square feet of canopy are you proposing to put in the residential zone? That's
It
my
would
question.
well, if you're including the 50-foot extension zone, then it would probably be 13 to 14,000 square feet. But the town
50
attorney
to 10 or
See-
all together?
altogether. So in the residential zone, it would probably be 13,000 square feet of canopy. But the town attorney has already said that extra 3,000 square feet of canopy is considered in the commercial zone. So that's why I said earlier, when you guys are wording this, that depending on how you guys consider the residential zone is what I'm getting at. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
I
you're,
have
you're,
no reply.
so the phrasing that we need to use, so we're all on the same page, is split zoning lot. You're allowed to extend the more restrictive use on a split zoning lot into the least restrictive into the more restrictive. So commercial is allowed to extend 50 feet. And what you're saying is you will grow 3,000 square feet of canopy in the residential district that is within 50 feet of the commercial zone.
Correct. Thank
You
you.
will-
both for-
And you will grow 10,000 square feet of canopy in the residential zone that is not within 50 feet, but is clearly within the residential district.
Yes. Thank you
Okay,
for making that sound good.
but we can make it easy.
Okay, all right, so
We can simply say you will be allowed. Maybe we can't make it easy.
And sorry I brought that up. I just wanted to make sure that I'm in compliance going forward, Didn't want this to come up later on.
okay, I think you could just say it is 13,000 square feet in the residential district, which includes the 50-foot buffer from the commercial district.
Or perhaps not to exceed 10,000 feet in the purely residential outside of the buffer.
Yeah, so what I need to do, I think, is I need to put a new subcategory in here to say the board finds that the property is located on a split lot and in accordance with zoning, thus and so, it's an early section in zoning. The least restrictive use may extend into the more restrictive use by 50 feet. And such area is not considered for the purposes of this finding residential district, but is allowed under the commercial use. And then we just leave it the way it is.
I think that works.
What do y'all think?
That makes sense.
I didn't write that down, so I'm gonna regret that.
But the clear understanding is the limit is going to be 13,000 square feet. 10 in the
Only res.
non-overlap, right, of the districts, and 3 in the overlap. the expansion zone, the 50-foot buffer, however you want to say it.
Split lot.
Okay. On we go, because you have a whole nother decision to go for, to consider the other side of this. So where are we? We're final, okay.
5 point, the standard conditions, page 10 of 15, 5.1 through 5.4.
Okay, 5.4 I have, limit the clearing. Wait a minute, 5.4 where he says he doesn't want to comply with inspection prior to certificate of occupancy, which we don't have.
Actually, I think it's 5.1 to 5.4. He doesn't think that. Well, Damon, you address it.
Oh,
What is that you have a problem with here?
so the only thing was an account. So I just saw an account. I don't know if that means a bank account or what, but anytime, like we do business with GFA, anytime you put money into a bank account where it's destined to be used on expenses for marijuana, it becomes like a heightened supervision account. So I don't know if the town has some account they thought I would put into, but you would go into the crosshairs of Tina Sprague over at GFA if we, open up a regular account that was used for marijuana. So we'd have to open up like a supervised account. That's why I say it's just a waste of time. It would take me like a month.
Well, you
Or,
can deposit money with the planning board.
oh yeah, as long as it said an account. So I wasn't like, you can't take my money and put it into a bank account at GFA. They'd get angry at you. If it's used for marijuana expenses. So
Bill, how would you explain this?
It's a 53G account, which you give the money to the town of Hubbardston and they keep it in escrow.
yeah, I mean, I'll just write the check. I mean, I just think it's just a pain. I mean, every time you guys have asked us for money before, we wrote you a check. So that was where I was coming from. Seems
Well,
like-
the planning board has a policy that they get the money up front.
all right, so I just try to make the account then. That's fine.
Okay,
I'm on board.
you got to do it because other people don't pay us.
Oh,
So, unless we do that, we have had issues.
all right, no, that's fine.
Okay, so then this rest of this number in Mr. Smith states that the special permit items listed for review seems like an overkill for this project and a waste of time to set. Can we take that out and just agree we're going to do what it says there?
Agreed.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, out it goes. Moving right along at 8:45. What else needs to be decided here?
Page 13 of 15.
Okay. With special permit for 3 years, and he wants 5 years. I don't think. So Bill, explain again the logic. I mean, 3 years is what we had said. Seems like you're planning to supersede this in a year, Damon. Can you live
Oh,
with
yeah.
3 years?
Point. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's fine.
All right, we're gonna live it with 3 years. All right, water usage. $5,000, 5,000 gallons a day. Limit.
So the CCC requires that the applicant monitor their water usage. And I don't know what the frequency of the CCC monitoring was, whether it's weekly, daily, or monthly. But certainly Don and I spoke about this, and there are a variety of methods of monitoring the well that don't involve somebody looking at a meter and writing down a number. So technology could be employed here to make it easy for Mr. Schmidt to comply with this, because we're not trying to set him up for failure. And if he's got an employee who forgets to do a monitor on a single day, he's in violation of his permit. But it's important for the board to have the ability to review the daily withdrawals, because we went through that whole thing. So I want to make sure that the board understands failure to provide the monitoring well shall be considered violation. I want to make sure the applicant considers that, and that this is a doable standard. I mean, if he gives us a weekly, then we divide the number by 7. If he gives us a monthly, I think that's too long. So this is a discussion point. And of course, I chose the 5,000 gallons per day because Mr. Preventure's report says 5,000 gallons a day is a rechargeable rate. That's what he says in his memo. And it's less than the peak usage where we're not entering into water mining. And Mr. Damon said 5,000 gallons a day is workable. So I think it works for everybody.
I'm agreeable to that personally. I think that we can leave it like that. I have some concerns when it says that the request for a special permit is to place a high gallon per day rate of pumping something like 15,000. That's just open-ended for me.
That's Mr. Schmidt's words, not mine.
I know, and that's not, I know this is not yours, and you did very clearly highlight that there.
It's
If,
five, well, the 5,000 gallons a day means that is $5,000 gallons a day. You can't put 5,000 gallons that you don't use on a rainy day into the bank, so you
Nope.
can use 10,000
It's
gallons.
limited. It says there very clearly, it's limited to 5,000 gallons a day. If he
Okay.
decides to put a 500-gallon tank on the side and fill it up with another 500 gallons because he didn't use it and use that the next day, that's fine. But he needs to limit himself to extracting not more than 5,000 gallons a day.
Okay. So we're going to strike Mr. Schmidt's comments, and it's going to read just like it does, but minus this big limit, three times that limit, correct?
Is that correct?
So my only question is, and I'm really addressing this to Mr. Preventure, Don, do we have the ability to monitor daily withdrawals, or is that burdensome and hard to do? Or with technology, it just doesn't matter, daily, weekly, or whatever?
I think that is kind of a challenge to do. You'd have to have some kind of a computerized programmable logic control system on the flow meter. That's somewhat of a burden. I think we don't even do that for public water systems that I work on. If you can have just a manual meter reading or something like that, I mean, you'll be able to tell if the numbers don't jive, because you could do a spot inspection and kind of look at the meter readings and look at the meter itself and make sure the meter matches up the last meter reading that was recorded. I'm assuming you don't want to have staff or anybody have to record the meter readings. You want to put it on Mr. Schmidt himself to record that. So I'm just trying to think of a way you could do a follow-up spot inspection here and there, look at the meter that he's been reading, look at the daily recordings, and make sure that, you know, the last meter reading matches what is on the meter when you do the inspection. I would say.
Would it be advisable to change it to weekly, and then we'll just average? But you know, then the daily limit's kind of
right. I mean, again, we've been, or at least I made the comparison to public water systems. So what's required for a public water supply is that there's a certified operator that takes monthly meter readings, and DEP looks at the monthly meter readings, divides by 30 days, and compares that against the approved withdrawal on a daily basis to make sure they're not exceeding their daily withdrawal permit. So they look at it as a monthly average. So I think if you're talking about a weekly average, that's even more constraining than a public water supply would be. I think that's probably more appropriate.
What does the CCC require? Because they require it be metered. What is their reporting?
A CCC, what are you referring to?
The Cannabis Control Commission says you have to meter your water use.
We just have to report on our water usage.
How often and how?
It's once a year. So their annual renewal.
And so you take the meeting on January for the reading on January.
We're gonna turn in.
Can I interject? I'm sorry, can I interject here for a second? I mean, Don, I'm kind of surprised that you say that this is burdensome. I mean, technologies do exist. Water Signal is a very good example of a water metering system that not only provides immediate water metering, but they signal. I mean, with all of the technology that Mr. Schmidt has in his in his security system and cameras, and God knows whatever else, and modems and so forth, I would think that this is certainly something that is extremely doable, and that the recording of daily water usage is certainly something that can be incorporated within his technology infrastructure.
Oh, I'm not saying it's not possible. Anything's possible with the amount of funding to back
I'm
it
not
up,
even
but
sure that it is that costly, and so I would argue that this is something that is not only doable, but it's doable within a certain economic means.
yeah, and that economic means I would put a number on it between at least $5,000, I would say, to have to record something like that. That's what, on some pump stations that I've worked on, we wanted to know if there was leaks and things in the system, and that's when we did the real-time recording like that. And then that's what it costs to retrofit an existing control panel. He's not even going to have an existing control panel that has programmable logic with it. So, it's definitely more involved than the typical system, that's for sure.
Well, Mr. Spitt, would you love to know that you have a leaky drip system where all of the water is going out and flooding your fields? And even from a security perspective, that is actually a safety mechanism?
Yes. So we, I'm willing to do, whatever the board, wants me to do to make sure that this is monitored.
Yeah.
We have to monitor anyhow. Again, we're going to do once a year and let the CCC know, what we've used. I'm sure they wanted to break it down, but, I'm willing to help out anyway with this well issue.
Well, this sounds like something that I think makes a lot of sense, not only considering the dynamics of this water condition that we have here.
Yeah.
Actually provides you with some safety and risk mitigation mechanisms, and I would very strongly urge you to consider this here.
Yeah, no, I would be on board, with whatever the planning board wants, suggest that I do for, measuring my own well. Since we're on that, I guess I have some concern. What mechanism do we have if my neighbor comes back and he just turns on his own well? Like, say we put some plants in the ground, and he goes, screw it. He just turns on his own well and runs his own well dry.
I'm sorry, point of order.
Yeah.
We're not discussing sabotage here. We're really discussing the points of the finding here. So I really would appreciate you sticking to this point.
All right, I was talking water monitoring is where I was going with that, but.
Well,
You
the
don't,
monitoring is on-
as a general resident in this community, you're entitled to a reasonable amount of water. If he wants to have tomatoes growing, you can't say, nope, you're limited to the 400, you're the one coming in as the new guy and,
Right.
and having the big draw here, right? So I would think you could get daily readings. You're going to have people on the site daily during the grow season, are you not?
Yeah, every day.
Okay, so you don't have to record your draw on the off season, does he? He only has to record during the months it's planted, Bill, right?
Correct.
So he used to limit his consumption to 55,000 gallons a day from, you can put the dates on there and keep a log, and during the growing season, submit it to on request by the planning board or weekly. Just send in a report weekly. It's not that it's 365 days a year, it's 12 weeks. Anybody have a problem with that? All right, moving along. That's what we're going to do. So it's 5,000 gallons. That's a hard number. And he's going to report water use weekly on a daily water use weekly to the planning board, or if requested during the growing season, okay, moving right along. I think Bill can do that. All right, so the majority, the dominant, 50% equal, greater or less than. Bill, you got to do that also in the second line of 8A. 50%, yeah, so carry over that change. Okay, the intermediate fence. He doesn't want a fence. Can we Does your aerial view allow you to do that, to see that? And Damon, how would you otherwise demarc this area for us if you did not want to put in a fence?
The area is gonna be marked with, the grow area is gonna be marked with stakes. So it's all gonna be marked out with stakes and trellis.
And that will show on the aerial shots.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Can we live with that, Bill?
And I believe Bill wanted us to leave the rest of the area, growing as grass, so you'd be able to see that on the aerials as well.
Or patio or stabilized surface that's not gonna erode.
Okay, we got an agreement on that then. And then 2, the trailers, we solved that. I mean, at least for voting purposes, right? That they're gonna stay till November. Okay, so that's the end. Now we need to walk through the other decision. So that's the decision we write if we're going to approve, or we vote on, you would vote on to approve. And now we're going to turn over to his draft denial. Draft, final decision.
Madam Chair, can we take a break? I have a family emergency that's happening in the background.
Oh,
I need 5
yeah,
minutes.
we all need a break. Mallory, can we just pause it? I don't know how you do that. For 5 minutes, take a break?
Yeah, I can stop recording for 5 minutes.
We need to make a motion just to put this in pause.
Okay. Francois has made it. Is there a second?
Second,
Okay, all in favor, lived all I.
Right?
Monroe, I.
Okay, okay, we'll be back
Get
at
it
5.
back again in 5 minutes. Thank you.
Zoom it. All right, it's going.
Okay, just before we resume, I want to just take up the matter of our next meeting, because I don't think we're going to get to the rest of the agenda either. So, and this involves you, Mallory. The next meeting would generally, but it's the new year and we can do anything, but would be Thursday, the 17th at 6:30. Is there any place we can meet then? And is that a day that works for you still?
Yeah, the Slade building is open, so you can meet
The
there.
Slade- Okay, at 6:30 on Thursday, the 17th, it's open for us. Okay, so the board members, we're going to meet live. We have to by then, right? As I-
Unless new legislation goes through. I
Right.
think the governor is trying to push it through until September 1st, but I haven't heard anything yet. For
All right,
Zoom.
well, we will have a meeting Thursday, the 17th at 6:30. I will try to make it a brief meeting, but it will be the reorganizational meeting because we'll have a new board member perhaps, but at least, you do it every year anyway, new officers, anybody that wants to run for chair, think about it. And we'll plan on it being live at the Slade building, but, keep track of your email. But I presume everybody, if we can meet live, would rather do that. Am I right? Everybody's asleep.
Yes, I would rather meet in person.
All right, I think we should do that. So that's where I'm going to leave that stand. And now we'll resume our hearing after a brief break. And we're moving on to the argument in the denial decision. And then we're going to choose between them and see where we are. So Bill drafted this decision as well. A lot of it is kind of redundant, but can you walk us through it?
You're on mute, Bill.
Better?
Much better.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can-
Page 6 of 15. Item 7.4. So I'm sorry, I was on mute. The previous pages are recitation of the process and the materials submitted. And they are in fact a duplication of the approval. And I did update them to remove some incorrect references.
Okay,
So we're really starting page 6 of 15, item 7.4. And what I've done in 7.4A and 7.4B is simply recite the zoning regulations relative to the approval of a special permit and relative to the approval of a site plan. So it's a simple recitation to say, here's the criteria that the planning board must use in making a decision. And then,
It's worth reading those, honestly. I know it's late, but.
okay,
So it's Article 7.775 states planning board's decision will be based upon a determination that the proposed use as proposed or modified will have an acceptable environmental impact, will be consistent with the land use objectives of the town, will comply with these zoning bylaws, and in particular, 1.2 will comply with bylaws or regulations of the town and applicable laws and regulations of the Commonwealth. Section 1.2 is the, I believe I have it. It's purposes of our zoning bylaw. So it's worth thinking about. It says to ensure the realization of the general statement of purposes declared in 40A general laws. B, to protect the right of every citizen in the town of Hubbardston to clean air and water, freedom from excessive and unnecessary noise, odor, and the natural, scenic, historic, and aesthetic qualities of the environment as declared in Article, it's Roman numerals, and I can't read them, of the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. C, to permit and ensure planned orderly growth in the town of Hubbardston. D, to provide compatible development and best use of the town's land and resources. And E, to provide adequate housing and services to the residents, visitors, and employees of the town. So then B, so that's what's stated it is part of paragraph A.
special permit.
Special permit, for the special permit and for site plan approval, the criteria in 9.7 is the planning board's decision shall be based on the determination that the development shown on the site plan as approved or modified, and this would be modified, will have an acceptable level of community or environmental impact, will be consistent with the land use objectives of the town, will comply with the purposes of the zoning bylaws as stated in section 1.2, which I just read, and will comply with the zoning bylaws, rules and regulations of the town of Hubbardston, and applicable laws and regulations of the Commonwealth. So actually, that's a standard we apply whether you have to think it meets, whether you go for or against it, right? That's our, the measuring stick, right?
Right.
Okay, so go ahead then with findings.
Okay.
I'm gonna deny it.
So in reviewing the submitted material, the board finds that the applicant has not met the burden of proof sufficient to meet the criteria required by Article 7, Section 7.5 and Article 9, Section 9.7 as follows. 1, pursuant to the requirements of Article 8, which is the environmental and community impact, Section 8.4AI, air and noise pollution, and B, I think that's L, man-made environment. Odor control. The board finds that the applicant has not provided sufficient proof or safeguards related to the control of cannabis-generated odors both during the growing or post-harvest processing. The lack of a building to permit post-harvest processing makes it likely that odors will leave the site and impact abutters in an offensive and or negative manner. B, noise pollution. During the public hearing process, the board heard from an abutter who noted that workmen who are currently on the site can clearly be heard from his residence by his grandchildren. The applicant has not proposed or otherwise addressed the noise impacts of the operations to adjacent property owners. The board finds that insufficient information on noise controls, mitigation measures, and operational procedures have been provided to ensure that this project will not adversely affect abutting users. Article 8, Section 8.4 VI. The board finds that the provision of temporary sanitary facilities is insufficient for proposed commercial use. No evidence of support or allowance from the Hubbardston Board of Health has been provided to indicate that this would be allowed by that board. New item, water supply. Number 2, the petitioner plans to use a drip irrigation system to water his crops and draw exclusively from a proposed private on-site bedrock aquifer well. Hubbardston has no public water supply or distribution system. The applicant initially estimated his water use at 10,000 gallons per day, but has modified the flow to be 3,000, 5,000 gallons per day for the 4 to 6 month growing season. Then go through the citation, which is a duplication of the approval, except for the final paragraph. The board finds that the applicant has not met the burden of proof relative to the provision of water and its potential impacts on abutting residential properties. Supplemental studies and assessments should have been provided to the board as part of the overall review process. New item 3, the petitioner has built an access driveway into the site and proposes to upgrade the gravel to an 18-foot width for two-way access, except where it crosses an existing stream where it is reduced to 12 feet to limit impacts to wetlands. The board finds that the driveway does not meet the requirements of zoning 5.3D requirements, items 1.7 and 11. Items 1, 7 and 11. Item 1, the board finds that the general layout and traffic circulation and loading area are not designed to provide adequacy for access for vehicles, and no accommodations have been made for pedestrian traffic. Item 7, the parking area is proposed to be crushed stone, which does not comply with the criteria of this section. Crushed stone will eventually have the stone voids filled and therefore cannot be considered as porous pavement pursuant to the requirements of this section. A stone surface cannot support delineation so that marking spaces are apparent. Item 11, on multiple occasions during the public hearings, the applicant has stated that delivery trucks routinely will back up the driveway, which is in direct conflict with this requirement. The board finds that insufficient accommodation has been made at the end of the driveway to allow reasonable turning radii for large vehicles, in contradiction to this requirement of zoning. Item 4, the site currently has no structures on it. Proposed are 3 temporary structures and 1 permanent accessory structure, 2 refrigerator trailers for product storage, and an office trailer for security systems and office space. A shed accessory structure is also proposed, which would be less than 120 square feet and will be utilized for fertilizer and tools storage. The board finds that the provision of trailers for a newly proposed commercial use is inconsistent with the requirements of Article 1.2 A to E and Article 7.1 E. During the public hearing process, the applicant indicated the trailers would not remain on site when active growing or harvest operations have ended. In his latest correspondence cited, the applicant has indicated the trailers will remain throughout the winter of 2021 to 2022 in contradiction to the previously presented information. The board finds this revision is unacceptable and finds such proposal sufficient cause for permit denial. New item, the submitted community environmental impact statement insufficiently addresses the impacts of the site on the town. The board herewith finds that there are proposed insufficient supplemental safeguards and the project will have an adverse impact on the environment and community. Item 6, the board finds that only portions of this site are suitable for a Tier 6 marijuana growing operation, which allows up to 50,000 square feet of canopy as defined by 935 CMR 500, Article 22 of zoning bylaws. The maximum total field area for the growing of marijuana in the residential district shall not exceed 20,000 square feet. The proposal seeks to extend the commercial operation of growing marijuana further than the allowed use as permitted by the requirements of zoning section 3.4. The use shall only be allowed to extend into the residential district for 50 feet. The application proposes that accessory support uses for the commercial growing of cannabis will extend that commercial use more than 50 feet into the residential district in violation of the zoning criteria. Concluding, the board finds that items 1 to 6 above, when viewed individually or in their totality, are sufficient cause to deny the special permit application with prejudice pursuant to the provisions of Article 7 of the zoning bylaw. The board also makes a finding that the site plan application criteria has not been met, and pursuant to the provisions of Article 9.7 herewith rejects the application as not having having an acceptable level of community or environmental impact consistent with the bylaws. Then it's a signature page. So just for the benefit of the board members, you're not allowed to disapprove a site plan. You can approve, you can modify, or under our zoning bylaw, you can reject, which I presume is a disapproval, but we're not allowed to use that word. On a site plan, however, you are allowed to disapprove or deny a site plan application. And if you do deny a site plan application with prejudice, then they cannot make the same application within 2 years to the planning board. They'd have to modify it in a significant manner. So that's what I came up with for the denial. And everybody,
Some questions from the board? Or comments? I have one comment, which is, I looked at the recitation of facts, which, and maybe in the other one too.
yeah, probably.
Can't find it. Hang on. Okay, on the top of page 8 in the second paragraph, this is the summary of the, I don't know, you don't call it testimony because it wasn't under oath, but the public statements made by Gordon, what's his last name? Savigny. When I don't think he's lived there for like 20 years.
Right.
And I'm not sure, and I don't think well, I don't know when he was required. I know he'd lived there some time before he had to redrill it to
Right.
that 400 feet, but I don't think I can say recently because I don't know. He had to
Yeah.
redrill it after it ran, so if you would take the word recently out.
Yeah, that's easy.
Of the year that he had to drill it. Okay. So any false statements. So to the board, you know, this is a sort of crunch time for us. We have to make a decision here. And I think, you know, you can think that the safeguards and the permit and the approval are adequate. We've certainly spent a lot of time trying to make it that way. And we've had some supporting testimony, or you can adopt these findings. And again, you wouldn't have to necessarily think they were all fatal, because one of them would be enough to deny it. Or it could be, you might think one might not be sufficient, but in the totality, they're sufficient, right?
Right.
So, I'm happy to continue the discussion. I'm also happy to take a motion to close the deliberations and vote. And then when we do that, the vote should come, the motion could be either to approve or disapprove. But we have to make it very clear on the record, okay? So is there further debate? And if not, does someone want to make a motion to close the debate and with it the public hearing?
Alice, this is John Demely. I'd like to make that motion to close the debate and close the public hearing.
Madam Chair, this is Francois Steiger. I, at this point in time, would like to second that motion.
Okay, all in favor, this is of terminating the debate and closing the public hearing. Roll call vote.
Demely, aye.
Monroe, aye.
Steiger, aye.
Erica, you can vote.
Erica Dack, aye.
And Alice Livedall, aye. Okay, so who's going to be the brave person that makes a motion here?
Madam Chair, before we make that motion, I would like to briefly request that after the motion has been made, there is obviously some time for us to have some internal discussions, and that we limit it to those members of the board. And if perchance there were any questions that had to be made either to Mr. Murray or members of the audience, that they limit themselves only to answering the questions that we may potentially have.
With all due respect, I think that the usual way these progress is that you get all those questions out ahead of time. So maybe we're not really ready to close the debate and we could revisit that issue.
Well,
And otherwise, you take the vote and move to adjourn.
So you're asking us to not only have this motion, but that then there's no debate thereafter and just go directly into a vote?
That would be closing the debate among us that we've done.
Okay, very good then. In that case, I would say that that's fine.
Because once you've made that decision, it's made, there's no quarterbacking for, Monday morning quarterbacking here. It's the decision, right? So,
My only point then, before we do this here, I mean, I do have some concerns here that I want to make sure that we, as members of the board, we look at the denial, and I think we need to understand whether or not there's enough guardrails in the approval for us to approve it. And this is just a comment that I'm using myself, and I would ask that everybody use it also as they're making a evaluation of the two options that we have.
okay, that's noted. We've taken this vote and it is very late and we've certainly devoted enormous effort to this. So,
Madam Chair, at this point in time, I would like to put a motion forth that we, at this point in time, as the board, vote on the on this special permit
and site plan.
and the site plan as has been presented this evening.
Alice, this is John D'Amelio. I will second that motion.
Wait a minute, that we vote on it. Okay. That we proceed to a vote. You're not saying either way, right?
I'm not-
You have we either need a vote to approve or a motion to approve or a
So
motion.
this
to
is a
deny.
motion. This is a motion at this point in time to approve.
Okay. So
And I
this is,
second that motion.
okay, so it's been moved and seconded that we approve this project. Okay, so I guess I'll call a roll call vote and maybe it's hard to step up, but I'll call on John D'Amalia first.
John D'Amelio, aye.
Elizabeth, Erica,
Erica Dack, aye.
Francois Steiger,
Councilor Steiger, aye.
Christopher Monroe.
Christopher Monroe, aye.
Okay. Alice Lipdahl, aye. So it's approved with all of those conditions. Okay, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Alice, this is John D'Amelio. I will make that motion to adjourn.
Madam Chair, before we adjourn, should we talk about any logistics that we need to do related to this because of what the restraints put on us by the election on Tuesday?
I believe that, Bill, you can get this document to Mallory to sign. This could be an e-signature, could it not? Or does it get recorded?
It gets recorded.
It's recorded.
Okay, so we need real
But-
signatures, or would the clerk certificate be good enough?
I don't know.
I know Kurt is able to file his with e-signatures and the clerks.
But this one does not need, so let me explain how this works. The board voted an action and I think that the new board can endorse the approval because it's an administrative action, not, actually Attorney Connors might be able to help me out here. I think the new board could sign the permit because it's an administrative action. It's not a deliberative action. And you would not need to rush to get this signed before the vote. I've seen that done before, but.
Yeah, I mean, I would, Attorney Connors, I don't know the answer to that question, but I mean, I think it would be preferable that the individuals that voted on it should sign it, you know? I mean, I just think that,
Well, there's a lot of cleanup work you have to do, Bill, on this, or some cleanup work, right? The new plan and the new, not much. When can you get it to Mallory or in the email in a form we can sign?
They'll get the plan and we don't need the plan before you sign because it's a condition of the permit. I will get it. I will make the changes tomorrow and email it to Mallory tomorrow.
Okay, so we have to go in and sign an A&R anyway on Monday and Tuesday, Monday or Tuesday. So
If
can all,
anyone isn't available on Monday, I can make myself available this weekend to head into the office. You can get it to me Friday, Bill.
Yeah, I'm just gonna send you the Word file.
Yeah, so I can make myself available to the office on Saturday or Sunday if anyone can't come in Monday.
Okay, so everybody can send Mallory a text if they can't make it on Monday or Tuesday.
And I'll send an email out with my phone number in it.
Otherwise, will everybody, and now you can walk in. You don't have to make
Walk
it.
in.
So the only thing I would suggest, if you sign it on Tuesday, you need to date it and put the time that you signed it, because as of the vote, whatever the results of the vote are, you immediately no longer or continue to be a member of the board. So I would recommend you date and timestamp your signature in your own hand.
Okay, so it would be when the vote is announced, right? Which would probably be Tuesday night.
Yeah.
Okay, so everybody before noon on Tuesday. Can we get there? Is there anybody that's got a problem with that?
I'll be there Monday.
Okay, if there is, just call Mallory and she'll work something out over the weekend. All right, we have lots of things we could go on, but it is very late. So I'm going to take a motion to adjourn and we'll start the new year with the rest of the agenda.
I believe I made that motion, Alice.
Okay, John made the motion. Is there a second?
I'm second.
Monroe, second.
All in favor? Lived all I.
Denalia, aye.
Monroe, aye.
Thank you.